All right, there it goes. Dominic, welcome, sir.
Hi. Thank you.
It is really cool to have you on. Anytime we can get like an open source maintainer on, I'm kind of in awe, because like y'all put in so much time to supporting all this stuff, and a lot of us just have we should be having a lot of gratitude for all the stuff you do for free. So really
Thank you.
appreciate. Let's start with just off with that. Really appreciate what you do for React Query, and also you maintain another open source library, correct?
I do. Yeah, it's not as well known as React Query. It's called Remeda. It's a TypeScript utility library, pretty much a mixture of, let's say, Lodash and Ramda, but with, I would say, better types and better ergonomics to use it
Is
because
this
it
it
has
right
data.
here?
That's it. Yeah.
Cool.
Sorry for the horrible docs page. We need to actually redo this at one point, but I don't have the time for it. So what I really like about Remeda is that it has a data first and a data last notation, which means you can use it
Mm-hmm.
in the functional curried version approach that you have in Ramda, but you also have the same overloaded version, basically, to just call it like you do in Lodash with the parameter at first. And yeah, it has very good typings. It can do pipes, and the types flow through completely. And I also have to say, I didn't make that library. I also didn't make React Query. I think
Mm-hmm.
it's like that confusion. It did come up a couple of times in the past. I just pick up great libraries and try to help out wherever I can.
Well, you do from what I can tell, dude. You do an awesome job of that. We've got people in the chat already, uh, testifying to your greatness over here. Uh,
Thank you.
Haresh doesn't even have words. It's you're ineffable. Your greatness here. All right, but
I'm
yeah,
blushing.
yeah. Sorry, I'm trying not to embarrass you here. Not too much, but yeah, you should take credit for this. This is really cool. How you're able to do some of this stuff. I want to be more into some of this functional stuff. So this is very interesting to me. I'm assuming pipe is just like a way of piping to across the
Yeah,
different functions,
exactly.
and
It's
users is the data here. So this is data first.
exactly.
Yeah, cool. And then
And
over
this is
here, yeah.
yeah.
This is this data last at this point? Because at this point you're creating the function right there, then we're passing in the data
Exactly.
afterwards.
This will be data last, but this example actually shows how it's done in Ramda and that the types are not really inferred for the
Right.
functions because it can't know what's happening until you provide the actual object, which is why for the pipe, we have the data first notation so that you pass in users first and then filter and group by. Everything is perfectly inferred. But you can also, like if you take a look at the first example, where we have r.filter, this is actually like the data last notation because the users are passed in as the second argument to this function that creates a function that you're
Mm,
not seeing in here. This is kind of how the pipe then actually flows.
gotcha. Interesting. Yeah, I've done. I don't know. If I do a pipe, I'm not using a library. I'm usually just writing my own with reduce, which I probably should use a library for. So,
Yeah.
so in the future, I have this because I don't think anything I'm using is type safe. We got more people in chat here though. Dominic, React Query was the best. Uh, then if yeah, God, if I didn't have query, life would be so painful using shitty Utis effects. Yep. Same. And Kevin, what's up, man? So Kevin is the maintainer for Tanstack tables. So I've worked with Kevin a little bit too because of Dominique. Dominique set us up essentially. So thanks again, Dominic.
Hey Kevin, I do not have a T3 award. I was just nominated. It's we have
Oh,
to get that straight.
gotcha. All right. Well, let's strike that from the record. Kevin, get your facts straight next time. I can't trust you, Kevin. Uh, but yeah, cool. But yeah, let's go. Should we move over to Tanstack now? Let me bring up like the GitHub, and we can take a look. I love this new thing.
It's
Whatever.
amazing, yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't.
If it
Oh,
works.
that's messed up. Yeah, that's weird. All right, whatever. Tanstack query. There it is. Um, So yeah. Oh, released a few days ago, but I
Yeah,
don't know what.
it doesn't show the V5 release here. So here the latest, it only shows the latest stable release. But if you can go onto the releases page on the right, and then we will see that there's more action going on
Gotcha.
in version 5.
Yeah. So version 5, Alpha 15. What do y'all have a planned release date for 5?
There is no definitive planned release date because we're not really in a hurry. The alpha version is out, and we're getting great feedback on it. There are also a couple of bugs reported already, which we have to take a look into. And then my plan is this time around to make a beta release once I think we have the API ironed out around like breaking changes.
Okay.
We still have some things to figure out, mostly around like server components, how this will work in Next.js 13, app directory, hydration, stuff like that. Things I know embarrassingly little about, but we have a great a team, and especially
Awesome.
Frederick, great guy, and thanks to him, we're working on how we're going to get this to integrate with server components, hopefully
Awesome.
in a
Yeah, I
good
know
way. And then
embarrassingly little about server components as well. So yeah.
it's a very new topic. Yeah, we have like, we can't be on top of everything, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll and for all the Tanstack stuff, I'm just like I'll just stick to the CI/CD stuff, you know. And hopefully we're doing some good stuff there. But maybe we could take a look at the pull requests because it would be cool to
Yeah.
talk about the Jest to vtest migration first, right?
Yeah, and
Um,
thank you very much for working on this. This was like so great of you to also contribute to open source. So
I
thank you a
actually
lot
felt bad when
for
I
your
got
time.
it, dude, because I was like, I think you had tweeted about it, right?
Yeah.
That's when I first saw it, and then I was like, I've done that. I had done that before, but I was like, I wonder what it would look like for, I don't know, for Tanstack, you know, for an open source kind of project. And I went really deep on it, and then I saw the issue was assigned to someone else. And I was like, oh crap, did I just steal this from someone? You know, so that's
Yeah,
whatever.
I don't really know how that works. Like usually you open an issue and someone does it, but this time, because I posted it on Twitter and a lot of people had said that they would want to do this, I
Hmm.
just said, okay, if you post a comment on the issue, I can assign it to you. I think GitHub doesn't allow assigning it to anybody just like that.
Yeah.
So kind of like the first person that came and like wrote a comment, I assigned, but I don't think it was a problem. So
Yeah, I actually,
you were just faster.
yeah. Corbin, I actually know Corbin. He's another streamer that I was streaming for a while when COVID first hit, actually, because there's nothing else to do,
Yeah.
right? So we were streaming together a little bit back then. So I knew him enough that I could reach out to him and stuff. So I think we'll see each
Cool.
other. Is it Reactathon coming up in May? I think he mentioned he'll be there, so we'll see each other, and he
Oh,
can
nice.
beat me up for stealing his issue then if he wants. But it's fine. But yeah, so I actually forget what blocked us from getting it into the main branch because VTest still isn't in the main branch right now, right?
It's not, and it's one of the reasons why I don't actually want to do new stuff on the main branch, because that means every time a test is written, I'll have to like rewrite it to vtest. I
Hmm.
don't know. Did I write something on why we didn't do it?
There was
Oh
something
yeah, the
here.
React 17. There it was. So we have like on the main branch we
Hmm.
run two pipelines. We test against React 18 and React 17 because we support both versions of React.
Right.
So we kind of made a hack to like rewrite the React imports to like once import from React and 18 and once from React 17. But for some reason this broke with vtest, and we said, yeah, well, on version 5 we don't have that problem because we don't support React 17 anymore, so we don't have this hack, and there it
Yeah.
would probably just work. So
Yeah, I
we
think
just
if
moved
I
it. Yeah.
recall, I was like, yeah, maybe I could do something because I thought the way that we were splitting things up was a little. I don't even remember how y'all are doing it, but I was like, maybe we could do something where we just have a different machine where it's just React 17 installed instead of installing them both. But yeah, any solution would have been hacky. So I'm glad we ended up just putting it in the alpha branch, even though it was
Yep.
sad to say goodbye to all this work. But I think I was able to like cherry pick a decent amount of stuff in here. And the main thing was I just had most of it in my brain at this point, right? Like I knew it was coming. So
Yep.
that was cool. Mark says hello, by the way, Dominic.
Hi, Mark.
You got all kinds of fans, bro. They're coming out of everywhere.
That's so nice.
But yeah, we finally got it in, and then yeah. So by my calculations, I think we ended up saving 13 seconds per PR run. And before the show started, you mentioned you had some ideas of why the savings were that high. I've got my
Yep.
own theory too, and I'd be interested to see. Do you want to do yours first, or should I give mine first?
Whatever you prefer. I just have a rough guess.
Okay. I'll go first with mine.
Okay.
I think we actually would have seen a decent amount of savings, except for the fact that you are already using PMPM run to parallelize these things. So
Okay.
I think that's why we saw the muted savings, where it was down to just 13 seconds, because essentially the way things were going, PMPM was running, I think the default was like 4 in parallel.
Mm-hmm.
You can see this if you ever ran it, right? Like you can see the 4 things in parallel. So the fact that I don't know, the fact that we had saved a certain amount of these just meant that for whatever ones of those 4 decided to run first, each one of those might have gone a little quicker, and then we would have started the next one. So whatever the organization of these things resulted in just us not having as much total savings as before, because like the parallelization was already there. Is that what you were thinking,
Okay.
or no?
No, I have a different theory.
Okay.
Why actually there isn't that much time to save in the actual runs, because React Query is an async state management library. So what we are doing in the query functions is we are actually making usually a fake async kind of situation. So most
Okay.
of the tests have at least one sleep of, I think, 5 or 10 milliseconds in them. So when we implement, the way we've written our tests is basically we just make a component, and that component has a use query in it, and then it renders the result. And then we just, usual testing library, we render the page, and then we like click on buttons, or we assert that something is there. So we're not actually testing the hook in isolation. We're always testing the hook in a component.
Yeah.
And to make it to get it consistently with all the batching that is there, and because everything is async anyways, we have to return a promise. So we're kind of, most of the query functions that we have a little sleep in there. And once you have that, and every test takes, like, if it has one sleep of 10 milliseconds, it might take 12 milliseconds, right? And then every test does this. You can only save on the actual runtime. You can't save on the pauses that we make on purpose in the tests.
Yeah.
So I think that might be a reason why we can't get more savings than we've gotten out of it.
Yeah, that makes sense. I'm actually pulling up the repo here in VS Code just so we can show some of this, because I also, if I do like git branch, maybe we can see it in here. I had one branch I had been working on that was just like looking at getting rid of some of the sleeps where we could, or I guess it was weights, right? So yeah.
Well, one of the things that I found out is, and that's mainly why I think all of the tests have at least a little bit of sleep in there, is that if we don't do that, if things are too fast, then I don't know, that the batching in React Query is so great that we're kind of missing the loading states. So we can't really, like, the first render that you get, if you're actually returning it very fast, let's say, or even synchronously, then you are not getting like the render that has a loading state, or where you want to assert that certain things are in there.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, one of the things I had seen, because we're looking to use like the what's it called? There's a utility function from the testing library that, rather than like awaiting a certain specific set of milliseconds and just assuming, okay, it should be here by now.
Yeah.
It's just like wait for this thing to resolve
to be in it. Yeah.
Yeah, to evaluate to true. So I guess it must just be doing something where it's retrying that constantly until it succeeds.
Yeah.
I guess, I don't know. But
so if you open up the tests for use query in the
this one?
that's
Vue.
That's the Vue query tests. I don't know anything about Vue. We need to React query tests.
Use query.
It's a bit annoying that the Vue query comes up first. It happens to me also.
Oh yeah.
And then you can just search for wait for, probably. That's where we're kind of like doing this thing. Yeah. And like this just waits until this thing is rendered. And I think this might also be one of the reasons that this kind of like, if I've read the defaults correctly, it retries it every 50 milliseconds. So it tries it once when you invoke it. If it's not there, it sleeps a default of some time. And we haven't really changed those defaults. So maybe that's why every test then takes at least 50 milliseconds instead of maybe 10 or 20. So I think this kind of just adds up over time. And then with a couple hundreds of tests that
there's
we
nothing
have,
vtest can do. It can't like physically alter like the laws of the universe to make milliseconds go faster, right? So
I think what we could do is pass the options to each and every wait for, and then maybe make this interval of checking a bit more fine-grained. Instead of 50 milliseconds, maybe every 10, and then we can write a wrapper for it and use that instead, and then see if that speeds things up. I thought about this, but again, it's like the priority wasn't that high.
I gotcha.
We're fine with the 2 minutes.
Yeah, that's fine. Well, especially with affected now coming in between affected and the cached. The example I had shown on screen or for the video that we had put out was 10 seconds, right? And that's actually more typical than I thought. Like I was like, obviously this is a little bit clickbaity. It's not all of your tests that are going to be 10 seconds. Some of them will still be the full 2 minutes. Like if we pull up the graph here, let's do the graph, the NX project graph. Oh yeah, it's going to be super dense right now because all of your examples are going to show up. But
you can disable the examples. Is this not like if you?
Yeah, with the this is now embedded in VS Code. We actually don't have the way of filtering in here. If we open this in a browser, so if
you do it in the browser, exactly. That's what I meant. Yeah.
Okay. NX graph will open here in a browser. Let me came up in one of my red Chromes, but here we can show all the projects and let's filter out like the examples. React, examples solid, examples felt, examples view. And okay, so I think we're down to packages here for the most part. So you can see everything depends on query core. And if it doesn't directly depend on query core, it depends on something that depends on query core, right? So you touch something here, everything's going to light up. So testing won't actually help, except for actually the ESLint plugin. And that's obviously over by itself.
Yeah, the ESLint plugin is if you touch it, it's like it's the only thing that is really separated from the stuff. But it's good that if we change something in the core, that all the tests run for all the packages. It's the core after all.
Right. We have to do that. Like a lot of the both affected and the cache are just making sure that they're both ways of just skipping stuff we shouldn't be running anyways.
Yeah.
Right. So yeah. Let me do this quick shout out to Nicholas. Nicholas, glad to see you back, man. Yeah, nice to see the fan of both React Query and NX. And my bro Ahmed, what's up, dude? Ahmed and I had a live several weeks back. We've been good friends ever since. If anyone's out there hiring, he's coming out of college, and man, he is solid. So go hire Ahmed if you have a spot. But yeah, let's see. So that was kind of like just to v-test. And so my theory was that things were faster. It was just muted by things already being in parallel. I think there's some element of truth to that. But I think your point is really well taken too, that essentially part of the test, part of the instructions of this test is to just wait for this specific amount of time. Like wait for is the better case. And even that one's not great because even that one we're rating intervals of, like you said, 50 milliseconds, I think now by default. But there's other places in some of those tests there that are just like, always wait 200 milliseconds.
Those are bad. It's like it's also if it's 200 milliseconds, then it's definitely way too long for one test. But we also have some that wait for like, I don't know, 5 milliseconds hard coded, and then those are actually, if we have flaky tests, those are the ones that often fail. So the ones that actually use wait for, they're much more stable, and they're kind of like the newer way to write the tests, I would say. And there are some tests that are a bit older that still would need to be rewritten, but we are doing that as we touch them or as we kind of find out that they're flaky.
Yeah.
It's an ongoing process with
Yeah.
those.
That makes sense. Yeah, there was some of them because I was looking at like coming in, uh, maybe I can be something like a groundskeeper will and just like keep the tests sane or something like that. So I was looking at all those sleeps, and there's some of these tests that are actually it's not a mistake. Like wait for doesn't just fix it because some of the tests are like doing things in a way that they're setting up them up in a specific order using weights and then like doing like similar things where they're trying to make sure again using the weights that those things are happening in the same order. I don't know how you fix those actually.
Yeah.
So that's where I was just like, I
Maybe
don't know.
delete the tests. I think maybe
Delete the
that's
tests. There we go.
like the only way.
I like this strategy, Dominic. That sounds really good, actually. But
I
yeah.
have deleted some tests when we went to the version 5 because I think tests have to provide more value than they provide pain. And some
Yes.
of them were accessing like private fields and overriding them just to get it into a state that would then, go into a specific if branch or whatever, where it doesn't seem like we have a very good way to invoke this from the public interface.
Yeah.
And I think those tests were just made to kind of get better test coverage or whatever. And when we moved with version 5 to actually to private class fields, and private methods, real JavaScript private methods, it just didn't work, right? You couldn't even with the TypeScript private, you can still work around it, TS ignore, and then it just
TypeScript
at
private
runtime
is a
it works.
joke, right? Like
Yeah.
It's not even a thing. So until the recent, I think I have a YouTube video up about this, but until like the new hashtag symbol for actual private, the only way to do real data privacy was closures. And yeah, because everything else is like, you'll get a TypeScript warning, but it's still there at runtime. Like, there's nothing stopping you from actually getting that stuff. So actually having now the private stuff and seeing that blow up for some things is interesting. So I'm guessing with the example you're talking about, because we moved something to be actually private, the tests were relying on that thing being like pseudo private.
Yeah. And then the tests like didn't work anymore. So I looked at the test and I was having like a hard time to find out what it is actually testing or what it is good for or what this situation is. Like if you have to access a private field of a class and change the value or mock the value for something. I just went ahead and deleted a couple of those tests that I couldn't really fix.
Gotcha.
It's not a big loss, I would say.
Gotcha. All right. Well, that makes sense. I was thinking maybe we could pull up one of those, but probably not worth it. Maybe we could look instead. So maybe we could take a look real quick at the pull requests here to add NX, because I think like the story, like the real narrative here is like that was a massive effort. Just like looking at what it took to get from Jest to VTest. Oh, it's just a lot of files touch. Thankfully, once I understood what was happening, a lot of it just fell into a certain pattern. So I'm pretty sure you could even do like some code generation or some sort of automation to do this kind of automation some point in the future. But until then, it was just me. So there's a lot of like find and replace and all that kind of stuff, making sure everything worked. But yeah, a lot of time, and then it ended up not being all that impactful to the time, at least. I guess is there some other benefit to using VTest other than just the time in your mind, Dominic?
So it came to my attention because of the speed, because someone contributed it to Remeda, and there we saw like a really like good improvement from I think 30 seconds to like 5 seconds or something, because those tests all run synchronously, and that was like a lot better.
Yeah.
And apart from that, I didn't think I would see another big benefit, but actually one thing that I've then come to see from VTest is that they actually have built in test assertions for TypeScript type tests, basically. So they have this expect to equal type or something, and then you can just pass a type into it, and then you can like have a test assertion that tests if something is of a specific type, which we do in the React query type tests, because we need to make sure that when you invoke, for example, use query and you pass in initial data, then what you get returned is not undefined, or that the type inference works when you use the select option, or there's like lots of internal generics going on, and type level tests are like, this is almost same importance as runtime tests. But they're not actually running when you run the test. They're not doing anything. They're just arrowing out on the TypeScript level when you do a type checking in CI, so that you make sure that you're not breaking the types, which is also very important. And before VTest, we either had to write some custom like functions that assert this, but they're also like quite easy to get wrong, because if you have any in one of the types, you actually also want to get an error, and not like because if you do a type comparison with any, oftentimes it's just accepted because any is assignable to anything. So you need to kind of make it a two-way lookup to see if both extend the other or something like that. Matt Pocock contributed this to React Query, like the checker that made this initially. So that was cool. Really cool. But still, when you have something out of the box from the testing framework that you are using, I think that's a really good gain.
Yeah, 100%. I had noticed when NX first added support for Vite, there was the idea of having tests versus type tests that wasn't just using TSC. So I wanted to dig more into that. I haven't had a chance to yet, but that seems really cool, because like if you look at some of the stuff Matt's doing with like his was it like TypeScript Magicians course, or I'm getting
TypeScript Wizard,
TypeScript Wizard. Maybe it's called. Is it called Total TypeScript?
It's called Total TypeScript. Yeah.
Okay, gotcha. But it's showing that TypeScript is this whole other dimension on top of our code, and it needs its own testing. Is what I'm finding, and so having some like built-in framework for that, I think is key. Ahmed here says VTest works better with ESM compared to Jest, from what I heard. So I heard something about this too. Like I forget where, but I think it was somewhere on Twitter. Someone was mentioning even if the time savings aren't there, the fact that Vite will work better with ES or ESM is a benefit in itself. So I don't know. I don't know if I agree or not.
I have a pretty hard relationship with ES modules. I think like
modules in general, just terrible, dude. Like none of it makes any sense. I've unfortunately got to the point where I understand the difference, but I don't like that I do, to be honest. I don't like that I have to. But yeah.
I'm just so happy that big shout out to Damien and Sachin, both who contributed like the ESM compatible output for React Query. So now we do both. We do ES modules, and we still ship CommonJS. And it seems to like it works. It works with most of the bundlers that we've seen. It was a long road, but it's like I don't understand why this is like the most complicated thing ever.
Yeah.
And at this point, I don't want to understand it.
It shouldn't matter to people who are trying to build stuff. And it does, unfortunately, more than it should. But I think tooling is catching up to the point where it's just like not a big deal anymore, right? Like I think there's some things I've seen with configurations for TS up and just regular TypeScript that'll just like output to both based on your TypeScript. And so it's just that's where these module discussions should be. It's just like, don't worry about it. There's tools for it. Just use that tool and it's set.
There's room for a very good tool that does this, but I think configuring TypeScript, for example, tsconfig, that's also like very complicated. From like we've tried to set up TypeScript in a rather big monorepo at work, where you want to have each package kind of isolated, but still want to have dependencies from packages on each other, and how to set that up with path aliases and references and incremental builds and whatnot. It's a mess. It's
harder than it should be. In some ways that's part of what NX tries to solve initially. Like more recently, we've been focused more on the caching just by itself, and sort of the things that we can do at like a utility level of like, here's a way of taking all your task running and making that display better, and cutting out the tasks that we know you don't need to run. But there's a whole other dimension to NX as well, which is just it's sort of the idea of having the tool pack for architecting a workspace. So creating a new library. in a way that you can just say, I want to add jest, or I want to add vt or vtest. I want to add this. I want to add X, Y, and Z, and then it's just done. It's just up, and it just works with everything else that you're doing. That's kind of the goal for that other aspect of things too. So
Yeah, that's pretty amazing. I just think that NX maybe is not that well known for doing that at the moment, because I think the first thing that at least I, and I think many others as well, associate with it is something like a task runner that's also very good at caching things for you.
Yeah, that's definitely what we've been leaning into. Actually, originally we were much more leaning into the opposite side of things, but I think one of the things that Tanstack Query was able to easily demonstrate is, like, just looking at the PR that we have here. We added NX wholesale here with, I mean, essentially this is what changed. It's like we added this JSON, and this is just here to help us to help the NX cache understand the specifics of your workspace and how things depend on each other. Aside from that, it's just adding NX as a dependency. And then this particular PR was only changing things for our test lib script. So essentially, we're just switching from pm to NX run many here to say, just run all the test libs for any project that has a test lib target or a test lib script, and do 5 of them in parallel. I guess that was another difference that ended up saving us. This right here alone ended up saving us more time than the just to vtest migration, unfortunately. So
yeah,
so that was
also
interesting.
I find it also interesting that, like, with the parallel option, a higher number is not always better.
Yeah,
because we've also seen this at work, where we're also using NX, and we had in the NX JSON, we had the default parallel set to 10, and we haven't really overridden it or like thought about it that much. But then sometimes in CI, when a lot of things was going on the same server, we have seen things become very slow, and it got better when we reduced the parallelism down to a max of 5. So it's if you do too many things in parallel, it actually becomes slower because your machine can't handle it. So you need to really, like, I like the method that you had, where you just tried things out and see
at the end of the day, nothing
the numbers
beats a
were.
scientific method, right? Like, just try it and see what happens. And actually, like, Parallel 6 did a little bit better, but because I knew, like, the higher this goes, the more chances there are for weird things to happen. That's why I went with the 5. But yeah, it's like, I think it's dependent on the number of cores you have. So some of this too was just kind of hitting GitHub Actions, because I'm not sure what machines they use or how to tell how many cores are on that machine, I think. So I don't know. Maybe there's a way to do that, but yeah.
There is, I think, maybe just as an idea, I think PNPM has an option, or if you're kind of like, if you set it to 0 or you omit the option, what it does is it looks at the numbers of the cores available, and then it just uses that number as the amount of parallelisms that you theoretically distributed onto the amount of available cores, which means that on your local super cool MacBook, it might have a higher parallelism than on your probably not so good CI machine.
Yeah, exactly. This was actually one of the things. As soon as I had done this test, I actually reached out to the core team, and we talked about doing something like this. I don't know if it was PMPM or it was like one of these other tools. It may have been like Jest, because I think Jest itself has its own parallelization. I'm not
yes, it's Jest, right? I mixed that up.
Yeah.
I think Jest has this option, not PMPM.
Yeah. So by default, it's actually going to do the number of cores you have minus 1, so that, because one of the cores has to be like the orchestrator. So that makes sense. But yeah, like, I don't know. Parallel is just a weird thing. We have Rarsh here in chat asking, how do I test the parallel flag properly? If you look at the Git commits, this is what I did. Like, you can get a little bit far with like this armchair engineering, but I think at the end of the day, this is actually the most solid approach to solving some of these problems. So
just use 5. I think that's the
just use 5 or just use 5. There we go. That works too. But yeah, nothing better than trying something out and actually getting the results, or just using 5. So So yeah, so that was all it took, I guess. Looking at this, if you run npx nx init, essentially this would happen. I did at this point I had already known about at least the test tasks going on in Tanstack query, so I was able to figure out most of this myself. I think there's maybe a little more tuning to this we did afterwards,
Yeah,
but like this
there
was
wasn't a lot
pretty
of yeah.
close. So yeah. Um, but yeah, and a lot of this too is just like let's figure out. We had a name group here, global build affecting config. So it was like our Babel config, our rollup, all this kind of stuff, and non-build affecting config. So it was like the just preset, the islint. So interesting that this was still here actually. Hopefully we got rid of this because just preset should be gone.
No,
No.
I think the NX PR actually went
That's
to
right.
main, and
That's
then
right.
I merged main back into alpha, and then I pinged you about the necessary changes regarding jest and vtest, and then we kind of figured it out and fixed that as well. But yeah, the NX is on both now, on main and on alpha.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah. Thank you for moving that over, by the way. That was cool.
Sure.
But yeah, we can take a look now too, because in addition to getting NX, we now are with NX Cloud. I'm just going to like grab a recent pull request so we can take a look at some of this maybe. Oh, I don't see it in here.
Yeah, this is like one of the things that's interesting about GitHub. I don't know if there's something we can change it, but
Hmm.
if there's a first-time contributor, it won't run the CI pipeline
That's
unless
right.
someone, a maintainer, actually. I can, or we can run it on this one if you want, so I can actually start it up.
Sure.
Like this was the topmost. I haven't seen this PR yet. I hadn't taken a look at it today, but
let's see. Let's see what's going on.
I can
Okay.
approve it.
I don't know. I
It
don't know if
changes
you
it.
want to.
Changes it. So I have run the pipeline. It's starting. So we can take a look. If I don't know what happens if you change a tsconfig file, probably everything is invalidated or should be. Right?
Yeah.
Tsconfig base JSON. Yeah, that's a pretty global affecting thing. So.
Yeah. Well, it should be. It should be the case that all of the cache gets invalidated here. Well, not invalidated. I guess this is an interesting distinction between like the Tanstack query cache and the NX cache, because well, I'd be interested to find out because I don't go that far deep on React query, but the idea with React query is the cache is it's just a single point in time, right? Like you just have a single cache, and the idea is once there's a reason to invalidate it, it's gone. Is that right?
Well, you have one single cache, but in this cache you cache resources per the query key. So you can have multiple resources in the same cache, and the invalidation also happens on the key level. So you are rarely invalidating the whole cache, and also in invalidating doesn't actually mean like we throw the cache away. It just means we mark the cache as something that isn't fresh anymore.
Right.
And at that point, once you need that value, you are getting it back, the stale value, immediately, and then we are actually refreshing it. So unless you want to actually clear the cache or remove something from the cache, React query will not remove anything from the cache unless it's for garbage collection. That's also like, I think, one of the kind of like confusion points that a lot of people have. React query will not remove the entry from the cache. We will, like, once there is data, unless you really are not using it for the amount that you've specified as the cache time, it will stay in the cache and you will always get that data. It's like one of the premises that, data that's a bit outdated is still better than like no data and a loading spinner.
Yeah, that's interesting. So I guess like the way NX works, it's actually like the NX cache is very much like memoization for like a function. If you've ever messed with that, so like we can tell for a function, assuming a function's pure. Like maybe we can do this in like VS Code real quick. Like, let me just pull up a TypeScript file. I guess this one works vite config. So like if you have some function that's like add, for example, and then you have, I don't know, A and B. So return A and B. You can essentially memoize this by having some outside cache, right? Cache. Let's just make it an object literal, and then we can say something like this, where if we can make like a hash of what our inputs look like, so constant hash, and here it would just be like A and then B.
Yeah.
So this would just give us a unique hash based on our inputs. And then we can say if cache hash, right? Yeah, Copilot knows where we're going. Then just return this.
Yeah.
Otherwise, like it's like we'd actually do something like this probably. It's constant result equals A plus B. And then
you write it to the cache. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And then return it. Right. Yeah. So this is kind of how NX cache works. It's just like the inputs here is actually like the stuff in the NX JSON is telling us what all to pull into those inputs in order to hash them together to put them in the cache. But yeah, like this is exactly what happens. It's like, well, if based on that hash, if it already exists for this task, then just replay what we stored.
And what is the input when I'm saying like run the tests for this package? Is it like the content of all the source files hashed together?
Yes. So we do like a hashing of, it's not just your source files either. It's also like anything that's being pulled in from node modules. So if your code wasn't, so this is maybe a place where caching has better benefit than affected, because with caching, we'll actually be able to tell if one of your, like if what you happen to have in node modules is different from a previous time you've run it, right? So
yeah.
Excuse me. So yeah, we'll hash those together in a way that like it's not this is a very naive maybe hash. I mean, it works for this, but that's because our inputs are really small. Like there's huge amounts of like stringify data coming into that, so we're just doing something to make sure it's hashed down. I forget the algorithm, but I think it's the same one that Git uses. I'm blanking on the name of this one right now, but yeah, like the point is just to get a unique identifier based on the source code. So if we see it before, or if we see that we've done it before, then we can just do this.
And I think conceptually, like if we take a look at this add function, conceptually, how you're building your query cache in React Query is quite similar, except that you have to do it manually and we're not doing it automatically. So if we were to like want to use this function add in the query function, and we are using basically two numbers A and B, then what we would need to do is we would need to put A and B into like the query key, because everything that you use inside the query function should be part of the query key. And we actually have an ESLint rule. We've seen it in the ESLint package in the graph before, that actually tries to enforce that. So whenever you're using something in your query function that is not part of the query key, then you're basically caching it under the wrong value, because that means that if this value changes, you're not getting like a correct refetch as you wanted to, or you're not caching it per the actual input.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I thought you were going somewhere else. That's why I did this. But like the idea that of like creating this in a way that's like at this point, like with our previous implementation, our cache was just global, right?
Yeah.
So that may be a problem, because you may want to like not always use the same one. So this way we could have constant add equals create memorize add, and now we can do add, 1 2, And you get this. You get this.
Yeah.
And you can also scope the like how far that cache should go. Is that the same idea you were going for, Dominique? Sorry.
No, I don't think
No.
so, because
Okay.
the
Sorry.
cache in React Query is in fact a global one. So you
Okay.
created once with the query client, and
So
then
there is a global cache, but it's the query key that's going to kind of make a new version of that. Is that right?
no, the query key is basically like the hash that you have, this
Okay.
A and then B, because that's like
Got it. Okay.
the key of the inside your map. So internally, the cache is basically just a map, and then we have to write like a hash as a value, and then the result of the query function goes into the value part of the cache.
Gotcha. Cool. Yeah, I was talking to I was on one of Tanner's streams, and he used use memo, and I was just telling him this is what I do because I don't like hooks in general, and that could be an interesting place to take the conversation next. But let's go back. Let's pop off the stack a bit. Let's go to there was the yeah. We wanted to look at the PR and see what happened here.
Yeah.
Let's see. Okay, there it is. I was looking. This is what I was hoping to show. I guess it didn't run until you cleared it. But the NX Cloud report has a nice way of just showing like this is like the goal for all this is to kind of make the CI tools better so that we can show. I think we want to do some better things here as well, but we can break it down to this is what your PR workflow breaks down to, right? Is running essentially these 4 scripts. So by clicking into one of these, for example, we will open it up in NX Cloud, and that will show us all the details of this. So it looks like actually a lot of this stuff got cached, which maybe not be the right thing. We may need to adjust the cache a little bit to make sure if that the base TS config is affected by this. But
yeah, I think the base TS config needs to invalidate the whole cache, needs to go into the inputs, right?
Interestingly, it didn't affect the React Query one. That one still got run.
That has a cache miss, yeah. Interesting.
What happened there? That's very odd. Because it's
I don't know,
not
you tell me.
affected. Yeah, I don't know. Let's see. Files changed. Is it? I don't know. Okay.
Well, we picked a great example here, but you know, I think it shows that caching is indeed hard. So
it is hard.
It's not.
Yeah.
It's not the easiest thing.
All right. I've got off stream. I'll come back into this. We'll fix this today because I don't like that. I don't like that at all, dude. Okay, what's going on? There's another one? Okay, that was a hit too. I don't know what happened there. We'll find out. What does this show us? Okay, this just shows us the logs for it. All right. Affected did its job though. It effectively said that all of these
everything is affected.
Yeah.
That's cool.
So the cache, it's just the cache that didn't. So we'll figure it out though. But yeah, being able to have this in itself, I think, is really nice to just be able to click through to what those things look like. I guess like the checks down here are helpful too. It's kind of a pain that they go away sometimes, but yeah. So that way we can see, and not mutually exclusive either with NX Cloud. So looks like the build probably did the right thing and got invalidated. So
yeah.
All right. Well, cool.
And maybe one of the things we see here that was the first improvement that we made. If we see that the install dependencies takes 10 seconds, that was all due to PMPM and how we've kind of are storing the result of previous installations. So we can see that.
Can I pull up the workflow file here so we can take a look at that? Because that's always interesting to me too. But yeah, so which job were we looking at there? Was that the build job, I think?
It doesn't really matter because all of them basically do the same thing. When we say install dependencies, we install them with PMPM, and then you just say you say cache PMPM. So then GitHub Actions knows that it needs to take the first of all, it restores the PMPM cache that it has stored, but also after it ran the installation, it's kind of trying to just save the new installation to the cache. And if
we should have named this live stream like all about caching, because this is a completely different kind of caching too.
It's a different kind of caching, but if you go back to the PR run, we can see that actually restoring the cache takes like, I don't know, it's a couple of 100 megabytes. So if you go to like it's in the first setup. Yeah, here exactly. So cache size is 93 megabytes. So it kind of restores that in like 7 seconds. And then in install dependencies, if we open that up, we can see that it's trying to install like 1,200 modules, but it's not downloading any of them, right? So in the progress, you can see it's just reusing them. And then PMPM just symlinks everything into your node modules. So there isn't a single download. And this kind of like is done in 10 seconds. And before that, we had a normal NPM install, and it was pretty ineffective because we couldn't even limit it to production, dependencies and stuff like that. So I think at one point it took 3 minutes just to install and download all the dependencies every time. It was like quite horrible. And then the switch to PMPM plus the cache, we're usually done in 10 seconds, 30 seconds tops if there's a new dependency that needs to be downloaded that's not in the cache or something.
Right.
Really, really, like this also was like a huge gain. So PMPM gets all my thumbs up.
Cool. So the way that works is even if we had a new PR that introduced a new dependency, we could still take advantage. Or I don't know, does the cache get thrown away at that point?
No, it just like the cache is basically just a big like directory called PMPM store where all the node modules are in. And once you restore that, PMPM during installing says, oh, you need this Babel, you need this rollup thing, and then it just symlinks it from that directory. So if you add a new dependency, those 1,200 existing dependencies would still just be symlinked from the cache, and then it would download 1 or 2 or maybe 3 more, and then also put that in the store and symlink it back into your node modules.
Right. I'm trying to think. I think the difference here, because let's say you're using NPM just by itself, right? In that case, as long as the dependencies didn't change, I would think you could do the similar kind of caching. It's just instead of caching the PMPM store, you just actually cache like your node modules.
Right. Yes, you would cache node modules, exactly.
But then if we ever made a change to our package.json file, that would invalidate the entire cache. And then we would have that 3 minutes install because we have to install everything. So PMPM enables us to cache those better, so that even if there's a difference in our package.json, we could still at least get to the same starting point, right? And then it's like most of the time, unless you're doing a massive overhaul, it's not going to be like you're updating the world. It's probably just going to be, here's one new package or one new version of a package you need to add. So yeah.
And at the same time, it also saves like gigabytes of storage on your local machine, especially if you check out a lot of the same project multiple times. I use the GitHub what's it called, the GitHub desktop, like to just check out PRs regularly from other contributors to maybe do a little fix or change something myself. So I have like lots of copies of React Query lying around locally, and if all of them had like all the, I don't know, 300, 500 megabytes of
the black hole
modules,
that is node modules.
Yeah. But the good thing is they don't, right? They just have this, like, it's all global in the PMPM store, and then the node modules themselves, they have a couple of, I don't know, kilobytes for the symlinks. So.
Yeah, that's nothing. Cheers to Renato. Appreciate the love, sir. But yeah. So all these, and the thing here too is like all these things kind of stack too, right? Like the fact that you're using PMPM doesn't invalidate that we got benefits from NX. Same thing with the Just to VTest migration. Like, even though I was like a little bummed that it didn't cut our times to like half or something like that, that is like kind of almost immaterial. We could have done NX and used it or not used it, and either way it would have been fine. But by switching to VTest, as long as that is a net boost, that still helps us inside of NX as well. So, or inside of a world where we're using NX, I guess. So
yeah, it all adds up.
Yeah, all these things add up, and they're all worth doing most of the time. Sometimes I think there is maybe a effort to value comparison to be made. So yeah, but it is what it is.
Well,
But yeah,
there were times when like a build or a release of React Query took like over 5 minutes, and
yeah.
then it was like it had a flaky test, and it didn't release, and I was just doing something, merging it, and going away, and only a couple of hours later I was able to retry it or whatever. So it's kind of like there were real effects of like things not being fast enough with this. So I take every win that we're
Yeah.
getting.
I don't know if you counted this one as a win or not. There's the other PR I had for adding retries to cover flakiness.
Absolutely, absolutely.
This is just like cementing over a problem, but it was surprisingly effective, right? So
I think we might not have seen this, but even on the PR where I've just started the run, I think there was a flaky test, and it was then retried after that, and it worked.
yeah.
Um,
Let's take a look at that. The one you just ran is the top one.
yeah,
This one, yeah. Let's see.
if you
I don't think so because I think we would have seen it here in NX. We would actually the way it would have worked is we would have
yeah,
seen one of
but
these fail. But
click on the edited, like if you scroll up a bit and you click on the comment, and then you see the edits of that NX Cloud comment, like where the comment
I
starts,
see.
it says edited, and then you have a couple of edits, and then if you take the first one from the bottom, we'll actually see. Okay, that was the initial one, so the one above that. We'll actually see that there was one target ran that was actually not successful, right? So there was one failure, and
Am I
then the
missing
retries.
it? Sorry, I'm seeing only successes. Are we looking at the same one?
No, yeah, this one is like the second one is not successful because it's
This one right
oh,
here.
it says one. So I think I've seen it in between somewhere that there was one failure.
All right, let's see if we can find it. Okay, there it is. There we found it. Failed
Yeah,
commands.
there it is. Okay, yeah.
So we can actually see this run. Oh, that's why it was cached. We did it right. We did it right, Dominic.
What do
There's
you
no
mean?
problem. It was
It
cached.
was
That was a cool piece that we actually could benefit from before we brought in the cloud cache. Oh, I feel so much better now.
oh, we missed that. So the way
Yeah.
it works was that nothing was cached, everything was like invalidated. But then on the first run, like
Yeah.
8 out of 10 were actually correct, and only those 2 React query ones were failing because of flakiness. And then the other ones, when you made the retries, the other ones were coming from the cache, and this one was not. This is actually brilliant because it makes the retries even better, right?
Yeah.
Because the retries only retry what was actually failed.
That's why I was like in a hurry to get the retrying in, because I was like, how do we show off? How do I demonstrate to this person I look up to, TK Dodo, that this was worth it? And I was like, I know we could add retries because they're having flaky tests anyways. But then on the subsequent tries, we can show, hey, the cache is actually helping you here. But yeah, this was, I guess, was this the first run? No, I guess this must have been. No, this was a second run. So this one, we could see there was a lot of cache hits.
Yeah.
This was from the ones that had passed the first time.
So
and
on
then the second
on the
time,
first run, we had 2 failures actually. We had the DevTools failures and React Query failure. Then it ran once more. Everything from the cache, the DevTools were okay, and then another retry. We have to work on the flaky tests. I think.
Do, but like that's the thing is by adding the retries in, that makes it us less likely to fix them. Maybe rightfully so, but I don't know.
Especially if then everything else comes from the cache, right? And it just takes like the other ones that have succeeded once, they are now like under 1 second instead of 1 minute and 25 seconds. So there's there's that. That's pretty cool.
Well, so affected. So this maybe demonstrates some of the this is why I like to just use caching only, because like it's at some point affected just doesn't matter as long as the cache is set up right. Because like affected is comparing, you can see the base right here up top. It's comparing that specific commit to some target. And our target here for this one is main, right? Because we're just trying to get it into the main branch. So affected is not going to help us if we ever retry something on the same branch, because it's still changed. It's like it didn't get added to something to let us know that we can skip it, but the cache does let us know that we can skip it, because that's what this like less than 1 second is. It's essentially saying like if we scroll to the bottom, I guess we don't put it in here. because this is just like the actual output of the task itself. But if we had run this in like our own terminal, we would have said at the bottom, like replayed from cache. I forget what the message is specifically, but yeah, that's what happened. Like first time we ever ran it is on the right hand side. So affected did do its job. The cache did do its job. It was invalidated correctly. Second time through, we reran things.
It's even a local cache hit, right? I've never seen a local cache hit because we don't have retries where we're using an X. But it actually means that it ran once and then it failed and then it ran on the same machine again. So it didn't even need the remote caching. It was just grabbing it from the same machine.
And that's like if we look back at our function here, it's like what if we had like two caches? One was this cache and then there's another cloud cache. And this, like, obviously, this is kind of make-believe because we actually need a network request to check the cloud cache. But it would be like, first we check the cache, and then we check the cloud cache. Did that backwards, right? But cloud cache. I told you I suck at typing when I'm streaming. I suck at typing in general, but that works. There'd actually be a step between here, too, where actually... we take like the results from here. Yeah, GitHub Copilot is scarily good sometimes. But if we ever like have to do something where we pull from the cloud cache, we'll also add it to your local cache as well. So
nice, yeah,
cool stuff there. I'm so glad that wasn't broken because that would have been really embarrassing. But there we go.
It just took us a bit of time to get to the.
We were the dumb ones. My present self was the dumb one, not my past self. So yeah, that's much cooler. Wait, what's this one? This is testlib. This one ended up running. Oh, what is this? I guess this must be another run, but why were there two testlibs? I don't know. We'll figure this out later. Maybe it's just me being dumb again. But there we go.
I'm sure it's fine.
What's that?
I'm sure it's fine.
I'm sure it's fine. Yeah. All right.
This is fine.
It's good. Yeah. All right. So things are good here. We showed off NX Cloud. We're actually all the way through the time we had scheduled. Are you cool to go a little bit later, Dominic? Do you have a hard stop?
Yeah, sure.
Cool. Do you want to put a hard stop at some point?
I don't know. Someone might come and pick something up. So if there's a knock on the door, I might need to get it. But apart from that,
okay, cool. Because yeah, there's a whole bunch of other stuff I was really interested in talking with you about. One of them was, I had been reading your blog a little bit. Let's pull it up actually, because I was really interested in. I think this one. This was the article that I had read. So this is like the introduction to practical React query. And I think the way you present the argument here is like, it's sort of this juxtaposition of Redux and Apollo is where this thing starts off, just in terms of state management, where originally you hadn't thought that these two things would be competing in any way, which was actually my exact take on the situation too. When Apollo first came on the scene, I was actually over in Angular world. So we had NGRX, which is, analogous, I guess, to Redux. And then we also there's an Angular Apollo query as well. And my take on this was just like, okay, well, obviously we just use Apollo as a replacement for the REST request we were making, but why wouldn't we still use the store, essentially like the Redux store, anymore? Like it's just that the GraphQL stuff only exists at like the data fetching layer. And then there was sort of a realization that, oh no, actually, if Apollo can figure out how to make a local cache based on your current state, and based on actually what the server's state is, that can actually act as sort of like a reflection of what that server state is. And then do we really need Redux anymore? Because its job, at the end of the day, the way I was treating the Redux store most of the time is, essentially a reflection of what server state was as best we knew at the current time, right? Like if there was anything on top of what the server state was, that was kind of done almost at a local level to say, okay, here's what we know. Like maybe we had a form, right? That was initially populated by like the reflection we had from the server, but then the user would go in and adjust it a little bit. We wouldn't like overwrite the store, right? To say here's the new name now. We still want to keep the fact that the server what the server knew the name to be, and then locally we'd have some local state reflection of that says, well, here's the local reflection of that. If there's a difference between these things, maybe that's when we enable the save button, for example, right? And that
Yeah.
when we hit the save example, that will go out to the backend server. If we wanted to do an optimistic update, maybe we update like the backend cache at that point. But even then, I put like a layer between it. And it's not until we get some sort of confirmation back from the server that we actually touch the specific piece of data that says this is what the server knows this to be, right?
Yeah. So I wrote this blog post. I think it's 2.5 years ago.
Yeah.
Um,
Sorry, I'm bringing up. I'm playing your old songs.
No, it still gets read a lot, and also like if you scroll down a bit, we can see, and I was totally amazed when that happened, is how many like translations people were contributing about that article.
Yeah.
So these are all like I think it's 7 different languages now that this article has been translated to, which is something that I'd never expected it to happen. But I'm very thankful for people making my content more accessible to everyone. And when I wrote that article, I had a pretty like bad misconception about what Apollo does or what the use query hook does, and then also the same applies to React Query. And I still think to this day that a lot of people that maybe start out with React Query have the same like misconception about the library itself, because we see it as a data fetching library, and then we say, okay, now I don't need to make use effect and Axios request anymore. I can just use query, and then I get the data back. But then I get lots of questions about, okay, now I want to write this data to a Redux store, or I want to write it to an atom somewhere that lives globally. And this kind of shows that the concept that React Query is an asynchronous state manager much more than it is a data fetching library, still is something that you have to probably learn when you're using the library. Because once you understand that React Query is a global cache that on your whole application layer that manages that state for you, you can combine it with custom hooks, you can combine it with selectors, you can actually do very fine-grained selectors with React Query, similar to how you can do it with Redux. And once you understand that you can actually just call use query wherever you want in your application for a specific query key, and you'll get that data back. And you'll also enable React Query with that to do all of its magic, like background refetches and updates and keeping your state in sync with the view that you have in sync with your server state. You'll actually know that you'll come to see that this is pretty much how React Query is meant to be used, versus just seeing it as a data fetching abstraction that will make it so that you don't have to write use effect. And then you take that data and you copy it to Redux, and then you can manipulate it or whatever. Because the moment you do that, you're actually creating a duplication of the state, and you're not having that single source of truth anymore where your data lives in the query cache. If you now have two places and they will get out of sync because React Query will refetch it at one point in time, and then you're kind of like, I need to write use effect again to move the data from one place to the other, and you kind of you've traded one like suboptimal setup for another one. But if you're using like React Query with as a state manager, and there's also a separate article in this series that emphasizes on this some more. But also in the first article, this is like the big takeaway and the big aha moment that I've had at the time to say, okay, it is a state manager, and you can use it as such, and you'll have an even better time using it if you're doing that.
Yeah. Was there a specific article you wanted to look at for that, the aha moment?
I think it's number 10, React Query as a state manager. Actually, I'll probably write another one because, or actually, like I'm preparing a talk because I'm going to give a talk at a meetup in Vienna in a couple of weeks, and it's going to be about React Query, and it's probably going to be about this topic.
Okay. React
And then
Query as a state
and then I'll
manager.
make an article out of it as well, I guess.
Cool. By the way, side tangent here. How do you have time for all this stuff, dude? Like, you have a full-time job on top of this, right? Like,
Yeah, so
how does this happen?
I work as a contractor,
Okay.
so I don't really have a full-time job. I do take the liberty of reducing my hours from time to time.
Okay.
And if there's like some time ago, I did introduce the open source Friday, which I think has now become open source Monday, actually. So I am like trying to do one day a week where I'm like focusing my time on open source and all the things that I want to do around it. And the blogging, I think I haven't blogged in like 2 months or so, which is a long time. So what I try to do is write one blog post a month. So I have kind of like, I have a bit of thing to do. The last one was in February.
I read this one too. Yeah. So this was in, I guess, in February. But this was interesting too. Especially, so one thing I should mention, like being a contributor now, I guess, to React Query, to Tanstack Query, I was shocked at the speed at which you were able to review and go through my PRs. Like I've never had an open source maintainer be as on top of things as you were. So props to you on that. And it was interesting to see, like, this article was talking about like all the considerations you take into effect or you take into account when you're considering, like, should I add this pull request or something like that. So
yeah,
it was really interesting to see.
This is more about when people drop feature requests and they're saying, yeah, I want that feature. And the first thing that comes to my mind is, okay, like, how hard is this to do? And some things are actually easy to do, but if they still go in the wrong direction, I'm still like not so happy to actually do them at the end.
Yeah. Well, again, maybe just props to you for what you're able to accomplish with your time. That's really awesome. I did want to, can we try to maybe like diagram out some of the state? Because I'd love to get your takes on like what your conception of state is. Would that be appropriate? Can we do something like, if there's something over here that's like server state?
Yeah.
And then we head over here, all the way over here is your component, maybe?
Yep.
And maybe inside the realm of server state. I got weird background stuff going on. But nice. Server state, ultimately, probably going to want to persist this to, like, I don't know, I'm drawing my little database here, right? So server state is like persisted on some database. We're gonna yeah. There's probably a cluster of them somewhere. It's figuring all this out, and at the end of the day, we've got like, here's like the API. So API is like a gateway to figure out who knows what's going on beyond this point, right? This is our exposure.
The backend team knows, yeah.
Yeah, the backend team knows. We don't need to. They do whatever black magic they're going to do, right? But component, I guess maybe even components like this other thing inside of, if this is client, or maybe we just say limit this to web development and say this is just the browser at this point. So the way, my conception of the way React Query works is it's almost like it's going to be like there's a store at the bottom of all of this. Yep. This is like your React Query store, right? Yep. And so the way this is going to work then is if we have multiple components, they're kind of, I'm trying to think which way to draw the arrow actually, because when the components calls use query, is it that it sends this to the store, or is it the opposite way that the arrow should be pointing?
There's actually something in between. So when you you can open up my blog again, because I have some drawings on that. I don't know if that makes it better. The article is called, if you go back to the
to the
the
React query
series.
piece.
Yeah, and then it's number 18 inside React query, where I'm kind of going through how this works under the hood. So if you go,
Great
if you
minds
scroll,
think alike. Look at that.
well, if you scroll down, we'll see the like the final version of all of this, even more, like, and even more.
Even more. Whoa.
And once more, and there's the architecture. That's the one. Yeah. So that's the
Okay.
final. So if you want to draw something, it's probably gonna look at, in the end, something like this.
All right, let's focus on this one then. We don't need my crappy one. So query core. All right. Well, this is okay. Framework specific.
Yeah. So
Then-
this also
okay.
kind of separates it a bit into what is like all of this is in the browser, right? So we've separated a bit into what is framework specific and what is framework agnostic.
Gotcha.
And the framework specific stuff at the bottom, the red one, is basically the component. And when the component calls use query, what we can see is it's going to create something that's a query observer. And the observer is from the core, and it's kind of like the glue between the component and the actual cache, because the query cache is like where all the data lives, right? So we have the key that is like the place where it's stored, and then it's the data that we have from the backend, like the copy of the data at the time that we've fetched it. And every time you call use query, we're basically creating an observer. And what this observer does is it looks at one specific query and it subscribes to it. And then the direction goes both ways, because what the observer can do is the cache, when there is an update happening in the background, or because you are invalidating it, or because you are writing to it. For example, when there's a mutation and you get an update and you say, hey, this is my new to-do list I got from the backend, I'm going to put it in the cache. Then the observer is automatically informed about this. And then it will do some more optimizations, and then it might re-render the component with the result of use query. But it also goes the other way around. So when you call use query, or you then call the refetch method, or you mount the component and there is no data yet, what the observer does is it's going to instruct the query cache to actually go and fetch that data for you. So the direction goes both ways. If we were to draw an arrow, it would go both ways. Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay, let's go back to mine, because I have some questions. Maybe I can demonstrate here, because I think like the multitude of components is actually interesting here. So let's say a new component is rendered, and so here we'd call use query, right?
Yeah.
Use query. I'm going to omit the parameters because I can't type. Sure. But use query comes over here, and then in the reference that this returns to this component, we'll be able, each render cycle, then each time we call this component function, I'm thinking React, obviously, but we would be we would have data that is a reflection of our current query store, right?
Yeah.
But let's say this component has, and maybe to a specific, is this what you would call a selector specifically?
Yeah. So there's like in the query store there live multiple queries. So a query is an instance of some data that you have on the backend, and you can have multiple components. Basically, if you call use query with the same key, they would observe the same query.
Okay. So let's say this specific query here is just called foo. And then this component also has a use query here to the same exact one.
Yeah.
And then because of the reference it has, it'll also, if this component like causes or does something to invalidate this cache to trigger a refetch, I'm assuming, obviously that would only do one request then to the API, right? So in that way, these things are like this is starting to look very Redux story to me, at least the way I think of it is like
it's very similar. Yeah, it's not like it's if you think about like use selector from Redux as the API, how you would subscribe to certain parts of the cache, you can also subscribe to your to-do store, a slice of it, and you can do this in multiple components. And if something changes, all subscriptions in Redux are also informed about that. And it's not different here. If you have two components, that are observing the same query by the same query key, and something changes in that. It could be because, if the second component mounts and the data is considered stale, React Query might use this as a trigger to perform a background refetch. Or if something happens, like you lose your network connection and you regain it, React Query might do a background refetch just to say, okay, this is now a good moment to actually try and keep your data up to date with your server state. And if something changes, then all the components that are subscribed to the same key are actually informed. And then so that like it just re-renders to keep your screen up to date with the correct data. Gotcha. But then you can take this even further, and this is then we're going into the advanced concepts of React Query already, is that you can pass selectors to use query. So even though that you are subscribed to the same query key, you can say, okay, this is like my to-do list, but I'm not interested in like the whole content of the to-do list. I'm basically only interested in the number of to-dos, right? Okay. So you're observing the same query, and then you write a selector that basically just returns the length of those items. Okay. And then what happens is that this component is only observing the amount of to-dos. So even if like someone changes the name or the title or like the done flag of a to-do, this would basically inform the observer that something has changed, but the observer will not re-render your component because it sees that it runs the select function again. It sees that the count like hasn't changed the length of it. And then your component it knows that your component only needs the number, right? We have 5 to-dos. So it doesn't need to re-render, it doesn't need to change. And with those things, you can get into really, really like optimized state management things. And I think this is what state management is, in React at least, mostly about, is to do your updates and your re-renders as fine-grained as possible as you need it, right? To just optimize how React renders your stuff.
Yeah. So let's say this one had a specific selector that looked like, let's say so foo was an array, and you say all we care about is actually the array.length. Yeah. Because this is something I'm curious about just from the way you're talking about it. So let's say the data stored in here. Let's just draw an arrow. So that right now this was originally it was an array that was like, I don't know, 1, 2, and 3. So so array like the 3. And then we see a transition here where this goes from 1, 2, 3 to, I don't know, 2, 1, 3, right? Yep. In this case, the data actually changed, but the data returned by our selector didn't. So this would not cause a refresh, is what you're saying.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's the same how you would write like a selector in Redux. So if 1, 2, 3 or 2, if that is your Redux store and you write a use selector that basically picks out only the length, your component is only subscribed to that. And in React Query, you'd usually narrow things down by the query key, because next to the foo query, you might have like completely different, profile data, dashboard data, whatever. And usually it's enough to just, select something like by the query key that's going to slice it already into manageable chunks. But then if you have like a list of things that's very large and maybe that changes frequently, but you have some subscriptions that you want to, actually only subscribe to the derived state of it, you can do that derived state with selectors as well.
Right. Yeah, what I'm seeing is like the store that you have here, the React Query store, like it's almost identical to the way to the way I understand Redux to work. It's just like the way data goes in is a little bit different.
You don't do it manually usually. So you don't.
It wouldn't be manually. So with Redux, the idea would be like you actually write a reducer, and then you dispatch events, right? And so as you dispatch events, it's going to go through the reducer and create a new state from there, and all that has to be set up. You have to write all that, right? Versus React Query, it seems like we're going to just use query, and we're going to give it like it's a parameter called fetch, like a fetch function.
No, so in the syntax has changed a bit in version 5. So what you pass into use query is an object, and that object has a query key and a query function that you need to pass in. So the key defines like what kind of thing you want to listen to, and then the function is actually so query key, and then that needs to be an array, right? And then you put something in, and then you have the query fn, where you And that's got to be an async function that's going to fetch data.
Yeah.
It returns a promise. Yeah.
Resolve something. Yeah.
I love that.
Sorry.
I always do that.
What? the promise resolve?
Yeah. So this is like one of the kind of like situations I always try to tell people when they say, no, I can't create a reproduction because my API is private and I can't fetch the data and I can't make a code sandbox reproduction of my issue.
Give me an async function,
just say,
bro.
Give me a function that returns some JSON. It doesn't have to actually do data fetching. And that brings us back to the beginning where I said, React query is not tied to data fetching at all. It's just like, give me a promise and we're done. You don't need to call fetch or whatever.
Yeah, I think this would actually just give me a promise. So I actually do need to give you a function. Right?
Yes, it's a function that returns a promise. Yeah, that's the correct way.
Got it. Well, obviously, given the name of the property, right? that fn's there for a reason. But
TypeScript also knows this, so it's
yeah.
We don't need to think about it.
We need a TypeScript plugin for Excalidraw because this is all messed up. Let's make that's a little better. Ugh. Sorry, it would bother me if we didn't do this, but there we go. Cool. Yeah. So and the query key, this would just is the idea that this is some string to describe this maybe slice of the store. So like in the example here, we called it foo, right?
Exactly.
So I guess I think I have a lapse in my mental model here because to me, the string should be sufficient. And I know that's not the case, right? Because it's an array for a reason.
Yes. So in in earlier versions of React Query, it could be a string or an array. But then like in certain functions where we were providing like all queries to you at runtime, you would get a string or an array. And that's kind of not so easy to work with if you're like writing like global query functions or something like that. So we've streamlined it to always be an array. Because it doesn't really matter that it's like there's no referential equality going on here, so you can just do a new array every time. You never need to use memo or use callback or whatever on your query key. It's just going to be serialized into a predictable string anyways. And it's an array because, as I hinted earlier, it needs to kind of contain all the dependencies that you're using in your query function. So right now, because our function doesn't do anything dynamic, it doesn't have like an ID or something like that. It's just returning a static value. The static value in the query key is totally fine. But if you have like if you have an input, so to say, to your function, you need to actually put it into the query key. And again, this is statically analyzable, so we will know if you're using a variable in here, unless it's like a static const. But if this is like a custom hook, like use foo and then you get x in as a parameter, then you would actually be required to add that to the query key.
Interesting. So this way the query. So this way. So there's, let's just say, use state up here, something like constant destructure out x set x. Use state 0, something like this. So this way, whenever x changes, this creates a new query key. Yeah. Is that actually going to create like, so like here we have foo. I guess this would be foo 0 initially. Yeah. Essentially, I guess maybe you have some delimiter in between, right? Yeah. But and then if we did, I don't know, somewhere in the ether, we just say set x1. Yeah. That's going to this store doesn't go away. This chunk of the store doesn't go away, but we create a new one. And here it would be called foo. Oh, that's interesting. And at this point, we're doing what we had seen before with like the memoization, where if this goes back to 0,
you'd get this one. Yeah.
Yeah, we already have some data there, and we could. Yeah. I'm assuming we can configure whether we tell React's query store to actually go fetch the new data, or if it's just okay, right?
Exactly. That is like one of the things we have these heuristical triggers that say like when a component mounts, we want to actually refetch our data in the background. But what you can also do is, or what you usually should be doing is you should define how long your resource is going to be considered fresh. So you can
right here inside this object.
Yeah,
now?
you can you can say and the parameter is called stale time because it defines
Stay
when the
time,
resource
like
is going
this?
to stale time.
Sorry.
When the resource is going to go stale. So
Okay.
if you say stale time is like, I don't know, 5 minutes, or maybe it's 20 seconds or whatever, it kind of really depends on what your resource is. What are you fetching? How often does it update on the server? Is this a config value that only, I don't know, changes whenever you restart your server? Or is this like something that is highly interactive and other users update it as well? So this is like something that we cannot really define for you. You have to define how long your resource is going to stay fresh, or when it's going to go stale. And as long as your resource is considered fresh, React Query will only read from the cache. So you can change between those access like back and forth all the time. You would just read
No
from the
network
cached
requests.
value and no refetch. Exactly. But
cool.
once your resource goes stale, what React Query does is it will still give you the old value plus a background refetch, and then another re-render if something changed. If nothing changed, then it will just stay as it is.
Gotcha. I want to. There's two strings I want to pull out. Let's pull out this one first. There is a refetch time too as well, right?
No,
there's not. Okay, sorry.
No, there's not.
I'm wrong. So the concept of stale, I guess, is it would almost be, we could think of it as a property on one of these slices, right?
Yes.
So and the idea would be React Query also knows, like you were saying, is there an active observer to this specific piece?
Yeah.
If there is an active observer and it's stale, that's when we do the background refresh. Is that correct?
Yeah, if a new observer mounts and it's stale, or if you have another trigger, like you refetch the window and the resource is stale. So we have kind of these triggers that you can also customize. But usually I just recommend to define a stale time on your resources. You can also define this globally if you want them all to be the same. And then let React Query do the refetching whenever it thinks it needs to do the refetching, because you control when that happens anyways with the stale time.
Gotcha. Cool. The other thing I wanted to pull on was you've mentioned this a couple times now. This doesn't click in my mental model right now, so maybe it doesn't click in some other people's either. But yeah, what's the difference between a background refetch and a normal one? I'm assuming like there's some properties that come out of this, right? Like if we do, I'm guessing it's like an object.
It's an object, yeah.
Yeah. So and I imagine there's going to be like, is there like a fetching object here?
There is an is fetching boolean, yeah. That's always true whenever like a request is happening. Okay. And there's data returned, obviously, where the data lives in.
Okay, so in a background refetch, is that mechanically different to the point where it is fetching wouldn't go? Because I think you mentioned maybe in your blog, like you wouldn't see the loading spinners. So I'm imagining it's either there's another dimension to this that says like there's either is fetching and is BG fetching, right? Or you just don't know, right? Or
yeah, no, it's the
background refetch.
It's pretty much like that, but it's is fetching and is loading. Okay. Where in fact is loading means that there is a hard loading state, so there is nothing that we can like display except a loading spinner instead of this. So a background refetch, the way we call it a background refetch, is because it's a fetch that's happening while you already have data that you can show. So theoretically, you don't need to show a loading spinner to the user because you can display the data, the stale data instead. Gotcha. And whereas the hard loading state is that like there's nothing else to display. And of course, you can also, and that's what we call like a background loading indicator of some sorts. When you look at this fetching, you can always display like I'm updating or I'm fetching, or maybe you overlay something. But you can still choose to display the stale data, while with a hard loading state, you have no choice but to display the loading spinner.
Cool. Okay, that helps. That's cool. All really cool, by the way. So Ahmed when he was on showing off TRPC a little bit, we ended up using React Query as well, and there was just some stuff I was shocked by, like the fact we had the network tab open, is because I was just like trying to figure out how things was happening. I was like, wait, why is it that every time I click in the browser, there's like a new fetch? I was like, oh, that it actually made a lot of sense. The fact that so by default we're going to do, I guess this would be a background refetch
Yeah.
in if you ever, if the browser loses focus and then regains it
Yeah.
by default, which I was like, I think my response was, that's really cool. How do I turn it off?
Exactly. That's like the response that a lot of people have. But
And I think the that's cool was appropriate. I think the how do I turn it off was a weird grasp at control where I didn't have it, and I don't think maybe I shouldn't have said like let's just turn it off immediately, because I
a
think
lot
it's a
of
valuable
people,
thing to have in production, right?
exactly. A lot of people turn off refetch on window focus or they turn it off in development mode. But
Yeah.
I think it's still, and the reason why you see it every time is actually a combination of three things.
Mm-hmm.
And one of them will fix in version 5. But the combination is actually that one, stale time defaults to 0. So every query is stale per default. And on a window focus refetch, like only stale queries get refetched. So if you set a stale time on your resource, then this won't happen.
Yeah.
At least in that time, at least in that time frame. Yeah.
Is still time in milliseconds? Am I
It's
doing this right?
milliseconds, yeah.
Okay, perfect.
And then the second reason is that the browser dev tools are actually a different window.
Yeah.
So when you, and every so often people like go to the browser dev tools, they clear the network tab, they go back to the app, another thing in the network tab. They go back to the network tab, clear it, go back to another thing in the network tab. So it's kind of like an ephemeral thing that's a combination of the two. But the good news is we are actually going to fix this in version 5 because we've changed the supported browsers list, and we're now only supporting browsers that actually support the visibility state event of the browser. So we don't need to listen to the focus event anymore, which means that the refetch on window focus actually is going to do what it was intended to do, which is when the browser goes, like the window goes into the background and then another window, and then you come back to that window. And the use case that I usually bring up is like when you set a stale time that's good enough for your resource, like maybe it's 5 minutes or 10 minutes, and then like you have like maybe a ticketing system or whatever, right? And you see like the details of that issue that you have open, and then you have it in your browser tab open, and then you go for a lunch break. And then you come back 30 minutes later and you log into your computer, and then you're still seeing that detail of your issue or maybe the issue list or whatever in the state that it was 30 minutes ago or maybe an hour ago, right? But in that time, wouldn't it be cool if like you come back to your computer and without having to refresh your browser, you know, it just updates and you would see like the new issues that came in or the issues that have been resolved because some people were working at the time you were having a break or whatever. So this is kind of the use case for this window focus refetching, that if you are like going to the Twitter tab for 20 minutes and then you come back and you want to see the actual update. So I'm
I
working
feel
with
attacked right now, Dominic.
So I'm working with a ticketing software that doesn't do that. So like and I have tabs open for like weeks or days, and then I'm like always refreshing those tabs because I never trust them to be up to date. And this is kind of where the window focus refresh is there to give you the trust that what you're seeing on your screen is actually up to date, at least within the allotted stale time that the developers have provided.
So without doing any implementation at all, by the way. It's just what you have. Yeah, that's really cool. Could we look let me serve up this application we have. Let's just do run many target serve projects to do in, I think, API.
I think I need to go to the door and like I have someone coming in who wants to like give me I need to give him something which was planned for now. So we could make like maybe a 5-minute break and then I could be back if that's okay, or how do you want to do this?
For me. Let me do. I'll just throw like a notice on screen, like 5-minute break, back soon. Do you want to come back? Let me make sure that you do. Okay.
I want to come back. Yeah. Sure.
Okay. Cool.
Okay.
What a day. What a day. Hey, welcome back, dude. Everything good?
Oh, of course my audio isn't working. Sorry.
No worries.
It's like
Is it
all the
me?
time.
No, I think I'm good. Yeah, while you're getting back, I'm gonna fire off a tweet here real quick. Maybe we can get some more
Come
people.
on.
I guess you couldn't hear that. Shoot.
Hey, there it is. So
There you
sorry,
go.
sorry for that.
I was talking
I
to
don't
you
know
like you
what
could
my
hear me, and I knew you couldn't. So yeah, I was just saying I was gonna
those
fire off a
AirPods.
tweet here real quick. Or if
Yep.
we're gonna keep going. So, but yeah. Let's see. So what I'd like to do is like we have this example repo that's using React Query because obviously, like, right. So the idea would be to like have you almost like code review it to see if there's something we're not doing great. I think we
Okay.
talked about off stream too. Like I'm not using the dev tools yet, and that seems like it would be really a big benefit.
Oh yeah,
That
we
was actually
should.
my biggest gripe with working with Apollo in the past is I had no idea what was going on with the cache. And compared to like coming from, well, for me it was NGRX, but essentially Redux. Like we would use the Redux dev tools with NGRX
Yeah.
still, and having that kind of tooling was so it was like core to my workflow at some point, right? So having something like that would be really cool. Let me fire up the tweet. Join
Yeah, the
us.
DevTools are really good. So this is like whenever I see someone not using the DevTools, I'm like, first thing to do, please install the DevTools, because like for everything that you need to debug or every issue that you need to look at, I really need the DevTools. Otherwise, it's like,
Yeah.
how do you know what's going on even?
Yeah, exactly. Like that need for control I mentioned, like with not wanting to do, not wanting to let the browser refetch without me specifically telling it to. Yeah, but all right. So let me. I think we're serving things now. Maybe let me start with just like showing you what we got going on. It's not a big deal, right? It's just whoops. Local host 4200. Okay, there we go. Let me get you back here. Sorry, I'm getting all discombobulated. But yeah, we have here, it's just a to-do app, essentially. Let me get our network tab. There we go. So if I have, if I have some sort of test I was going to do, I would add it here. That goes out and hits this one endpoint to create something. Obviously, we've got like top level UI over here, as we can see. But when we click it, we send something to toggle. We click off, toggles back, delete, and etc. Right? So that's what's going on with the app essentially. And then let me bring up how this thing is structured on this side. We have this API client that we can see on screen here. So this is what we'd be using inside of our fetches, essentially. Like the fact that we're using React Query is kind of immaterial. This is just like a generic client to the API that we wrote. And yeah, so that's this. And then we have like the two components, I think, inside of our to-do app. And it would be, oops, come into here. We have our to-do list, and then we have our add to-do form. So like the way this splits out, list at the bottom, form at the top, right?
Yep.
So that's how those things split up. Can I have you like code review this for me, Dominic?
Yeah.
Is
Sure.
that appropriate? Cool.
Would
Don't
we
want
want
to put you on
to
the spot, but
would we want to first add the DevTools, or?
well, it's up to you. Would that make more sense to add the DevTools first?
Yeah, sure. Let's add the DevTools
Cool.
first. Let's do
Okay,
that.
so I imagine we're going to do a new terminal here, and we're going to. Oh, what am I using? I think I'm unfortunately not using PMPM. Yeah, I think we're just using npm.
Yeah, that's fine. So let's do
Sorry.
npm add, or how it's called, and then it's
Tanstack?
add. Yeah, and then React Query DevTools with hyphens. Yeah.
Is that right? Or is that
No, DevTools is one word. Yeah.
Got it. Didn't like that.
I think Tanstack is usually not uppercased, so it's
okay.
Yeah. I didn't know that matters.
I know. I was just thinking that.
Yeah. Today I learned.
Yeah. There we go. All right.
Cool.
So we've got that now. And so I off stream I had mentioned I thought this was going to be a browser extension, but it's not, right?
It's not. No.
Yeah.
So at
Is the idea we'd add it at the app level?
Yeah, so we'd add it once at the app level, and it must be underneath the query client provider. So what we're going to do is we're going to render a component called React Query DevTools.
You said underneath, like outside of?
No, in between. Like it must be in
the.
It must be in as a child of the provider. That's one.
Understood. Okay, and what the name of it was?
It's React Query DevTools, like the. Yeah, exactly like this. Yeah. And that's it, yeah. And then we need to import it from, if you have auto imports, then you can auto import it. If not,
it never seems to do it the first time I install, but this is where Copilot gets me close enough, I guess.
And that's it. And there you see the DevTools.
That was remarkably easy.
Yep.
So I remarked on it, but there we go.
Yeah.
Oh,
you have browser zoom on, right? Because it's usually not that large, yeah. So you can resize it. It usually doesn't go that big, yeah. So now we can see our what is in the query cache. We can see that we have one query which is called to-dos. So the key serializes to to-dos. The one on the left side indicates that we have one observer. So if you do like more calls to it, this number would go up.
Could I try doing something here where I just do 2 lists? Sure. That would give us 2 at this point,
gives us
right?
2, yeah.
I'm still saying 1. Did I do that wrong?
Yeah, no,
now it says 2.
It's a hot reloading issue, probably.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
And we can see that it's stale because it's yellow, and stale basically means that the data we are seeing now is outdated. So the next time one of the events occurs, there would be a refetch. And if you provide a stale time, this wouldn't. Oh, you see, you've turned it off. The refetch on window focus. Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry. Let's turn it back on.
Let's get it on.
Yeah. There we go. So now 10 seconds. Did I do that wrong? What did I do?
There's a.
Sorry. Typing again. Yep. Too far. Okay. Yeah. So now we're green. It's fresh.
And you will see after 10 seconds, it will like go to yellow probably. Yeah, and then
I think in one of your articles you had mentioned, should we put like a delay here on the network for our API calls so we can see it?
No, it's I don't think it's necessary. But if you go to the like network tab now, you focus it and then you focus back into your application, we would see exactly. So now a refetch has happened and now they're fresh again for 10 seconds. And if you were to like focus now, nothing would happen. Right, so there's like, oh, now it does but now it doesn't, right? So now data is fresh, the event occurs, but it only refetches stale data and not the fresh one. So that's
cool. Oh, there goes stale again.
That works as expected, yeah.
Cool. What is this button over here?
This is a button to toggle the offline behavior. So if you're building an app that should also work in an offline scenario, what happens now if you like toggle the DevTools, like if you focus the browser and then you trigger, So what you're now seeing is that the DevTool, like the application wanted to make a refetch, but it couldn't because you have no network connection, right? You are, as far as React Query is concerned, you are basically offline, which means your application still continues to work. Like you will still see data if you have it. The query will be in a special paused state that we also expose, so you can react to this and you can like bring up a couple of notifications, maybe that you are offline and maybe it won't work. But as soon as you come online again, React Query will again refetch stale queries. So now it like says, oh, now we're online again. Cool, you wanted to run that query. I'm going to do this for you now, and then it will show the latest state, and then it's all good again.
Gotcha. Oh, okay. So that went to stale, and now we're on paused. And now,
yeah.
Oh, interesting. Cool. All right, cool. So that's all really cool. I actually like this a lot. Can we see? Okay, yeah. This is the contents of the cache at this point.
And there's a new feature, so you can drill down into like everything, and then you can see in the data explorer, you can actually see the value of it. So if you scroll down a little bit, we can now see that there are 3 items in there, and there's a little copy to clipboard button next to it where you can copy things out if you need to.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, exactly.
So let me try dumping that. What does that look like? I'm just hoping like an object literal. Okay. Yeah, neat. This was unexpected, but the rest of it's
unexpected to me too. Yeah, I haven't really actually tried that.
Yeah, I guess this is like the is this like the result of the fetch that I did? I thought my client would have done that at that point, like res.json.
No, it should be exactly what you see. So if you can you maybe like click on the icon for the whole list, because this was just one item, I think. Yeah, so if we do it on the data property, then maybe we get something different.
Looks like the same.
What do you
I guess that put it all. Did I not click it?
Oh no, it is not. It did, but it still says JSON, but it's an array now. So I think that's a bug in this implementation, that actually JSON is part of it. It shouldn't be part of it. Gotcha. I don't know where this comes from. Okay. We can file an issue later.
Okay. Let's sweat it. Let's sweat it for right now. But still cool. So cool that we could do that. What's the query explorer?
So that's a query consists of 2 parts. That's basically the data that you have, and then some metadata. And the query is basically a class that we have, and all you're seeing here is that class basically just dumped and serialized. So there's a bunch of metadata on it. You can see all the options. You can see how many observers there are. You can see a bunch of other things. What the current in the state, you would see like the detailed state of everything inside it. So there's like how often the data got updated. So you have a data update count of 14. So it means like 14 times we've updated it. Some error information as well, and some other metadata that we store about the query.
Gotcha. Cool.
And one thing that's new is if you scroll down a little bit more, I think
that's as far as I can scroll.
Okay, then maybe it's up. I don't know. Somewhere there must be these controls. Yeah, exactly. So now the new buttons are trigger loading and trigger error. So what you can do is you can get that query back into a loading state temporarily to see how it looks in a loading state. And apparently you're not rendering a loading spinner. But now you should see like how does my especially like if there's something that's your loading states are just shown very briefly because they are like very, very, very fast at loading. Then you can either, like you said, you can slow it down in a network tab, or you can do an artificial sleep, or you just put your query into a loading state like for as long as you like by clicking that button. And the same goes for error state. So I think this is a pretty good like addition to the.
There we go. I see loading UI. You're welcome, Dominic. Trigger error. Yeah, I don't have anything for that. Dang it.
Yeah.
Well, this is forcing us to do. What is this? Is error? I'm imagining.
It is error, and then you have an error property as well. Yeah.
Okay. Error. What does this one look like? Error. Error is unknown. Okay. Well, let's just use the is error as a Boolean. Is there actually? So one thing I often like with these kinds of things where there's like a multitude of Booleans. Is there like a state or
yes, there's status. Okay. Yeah. So the Booleans are derived flags. We don't do flags generally. So internally we have a state machine with a status and a fetch status, and all of like everything is then derived from this. So with TypeScript you can easily do status equals loading, I think it's called. Yeah, cool. It's loading, success, and error, and then you can do
status error. There we go.
Yep.
Hey. Okay. Yeah. So this is. Did I do something wrong?
You need to we merged this in a kind of a buggy state. If you reload the browser, I can show you how to you messed up basically. So if you do trigger loading, this is one of the things where I said it should be like one control and not two, and I think we're going to do a follow-up. So if you do loading, you need to do restore loading next, and then you kind of restore it back to the state, and then you can trigger the error and restore the error.
Oh, that makes sense, because you would never tradition. Oh wait, would you?
Well, you can, but not with the way these controls are made. So this is kind of like, an impossible state. Then you're kind of like in a loading and error state at the same time, and then kind of gets messed up. So it's we actually have to do a bit of like workaround to actually put the query in that state and retain the old data and then kind of put it back. So it's those two buttons are not the most straightforward ones to implement. Funnily enough.
But it is really nice to be able to just jump to the error state and then just jump to the loading state and stay there actually too if you wanted to.
Stay there for as long as you like. Yeah.
And is that going to will hot reloading mess that up too, or
could be? Yeah.
Well, we won't try it on live, but that's cool. It's also nice to just be able to do it this easily as well, right?
Yeah.
Maybe a switch statement may be better than my nested ternaries, but I like the functional stuff. So nested ternaries is like, I guess these are chain ternaries actually, not nested.
It's not nested, yeah. So ESLint would complain about the nested ones and the chained ones, yeah. I also don't like them very much.
Yeah, it's working for now. But okay, let's so ignoring that part, is there anything else about the implementation that we have here that would stand out? Do we do everything right?
There's one common gotcha that is also in my FAQ post, I think, is if you go to your get to dos function on the API client, we will see that if you go to the implementation of it.
Sure. Yeah.
We see that what you're doing here is probably not enough to cover the error handling cases that you would probably want to cover. And that is because the fetch API per default doesn't give you a rejected promise if you get an erroneous status code. So if the backend returns, for example, 404 or 500 or whatever, that fetch would succeed, and it would just give you probably an empty JSON or something. And then React Query would see a resolved promise, because that's what you get back from fetch. They're saying like the request actually succeeded. It just gave you back an erroneous status code. So you need to, if you're using fetch, you need to handle that, and you need to actually reject the promise manually. You can check for result. I think it's okay. There's an okay property that people usually check for. Yeah, exactly. So if it's not okay, then you're actually returning a rejected promise, or you throw an error in an async function, or otherwise you're returning like whatever result.json returns.
Yeah.
But I'm like, and because you need to do that anyways. And what people usually do is then, they abstract it out in their own like fetch layer or something, which is why at some point I think I would just use a library for that as well, like a real data fetching library. Doesn't have to be Axios. There are other cool libraries that are built on top of the fetch API. I personally like KY from Synresource. It's one that has an Axios-like interface, but it's built with fetch. So this is one that I'm
Is this called
choosing.
KY?
It's KY, yeah.
Okay.
I don't know how it's pronounced. If it's like something that's.
Am I doing it right? KY.
Yeah, there is. Yeah.
Cool. Delightful HTTP requests. Ooh.
Yeah.
I like that. Cool. Over plain fat, simpler API. Neat. I'll have to look into that. I think the idea, like the mental model here, would be like the client here. The idea for the client is it's actually more tied to the API than to the front end piece.
Yeah.
Right. Because this is like the API is actually just here. It's one of the applications inside of our mono repo as well. So yeah. But yeah. So that was one thing. So got to make sure your query function is properly erroring, or you want it to reject in the case that that we actually have a bad status code. Otherwise, it's going to look successful when it's not.
If that's what you want, right? Maybe
Okay.
maybe a 404 you can just return, I don't know, an empty array or whatever. If that's what you want to do, then you can do that. But React Query really like doesn't care about any of this. But if you want it to be in an erroneous state, and if you want the retries to happen, and if you want to actually get that is error property or that error state, you need to reject the promise for that.
Gotcha. Yeah. So, and like you said, this could be any function. Like it doesn't need to necessarily go to that. We could just have this promise resolve to something. But
Yeah,
I
exactly.
guess the key here is make sure if this is resolving to something that it should be in a accepted state, and that's kind of what we saw inside of the client here is results. The results could have come back with like a 400, and res.json would have still been here, and we'd have said, here you go, right? Okay, so cool. So that's one piece. Let's revert this back. So that's good. So, and this is using a query. I think there's nothing really else inside of this. I guess we do mutate, right? Because we have, if we look inside of here, do I need to refresh? Did I kill something?
Unexpected.
Did I mess up? Let's see. What does the arrow say? Unexpected export.
I think you're missing a closing bracket after the somewhere.
Yep. That's exactly it.
Must be somewhere like
that one's here. This one's here.
It's actually red. This is pretty cool. Yeah, it shows you that this one was missing. Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
Okay.
VS Code. It's better than people give it credit for. I love it. I don't understand. Everyone at NX is switching to what's it called? There's a lot of people on NeoVim, but everyone who's not on NeoVim is on the JetBrains.
Probably JetBrains.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't get it. VS Code's always treated me fine. Maybe I just don't type fast enough to notice the difference.
Well, I'm a JetBrains IntelliJ user for more than 10 years because I originated in backend development, Java and JVM stuff and Scala and stuff like that. So I was like using IntelliJ for that reason, and then I was doing full stack development. It was very good to have like your Java and Scala code at the same time as your TypeScript code in the same editor, and it was just like working flawlessly. And now that I'm doing more front end, I still haven't switched. So
gotcha. Yeah, I actually started out very similar. Was doing a lot of Java originally, so IntelliJ, and then I started out using WebStorm for when I started moving to more web development. But then at a certain point, I got to the point where I was doing pretty much all web development, and I forced myself to switch from WebStorm to VS Code. And I've never had a desire to go back, and also that experience was painful enough that I don't ever want to do it again. Actually, like I've relearned all my shortcuts. I know I probably didn't actually need to. I probably could have pulled in a profile or something like that. But it's whatever. All right. But do we want to look at the mutations here inside of the to-do
can we maybe
list?
like there's a question in the chat which I can answer if you bring that up. The one above. Yeah. So the question about the ng need query, which is the sort of official Angular adapter of the Tanstack query library. And we had every intention of making it part of the core, but the only thing I can say is that the author of ng need didn't want it to be part of the Tanstack umbrella brand and monorepo. So they chose to kind of make their own library. They depend on the query core. And yes, one of the drawbacks is that, they are not always up to date. Every release that we make, everything has to work in all the adapters. And that won't be the case for the Angular adapter. But it was, not my choice and not our choice. So there isn't really much we can do about that, I think.
Would you like for an Angular version of query to be in your repo? Or
is there a politically correct answer to that? I don't know.
You don't like Angular? Is that what you're trying to say, Dominic? You can say
it. We used Angular. Like we used Angular in version 1, and I've heard good things about newer versions of Angular, and I'm I'm probably eternally grateful for Angular for adopting TypeScript very early and giving TypeScript the necessary push to go into like all the other frameworks and to a place where it is now.
Yeah.
But we've never looked back at Angular after our experience with version 1. So that's
Gotcha.
can't really say more than that.
Gotcha. That's fair enough. Yeah. I've moved away at this point, unfortunately. I believe I'm still officially an Angular GDE at the moment, but whenever I can, I use React instead. Experimenting with Solid a little bit here too, but yeah.
Yep.
I know there's a lot of still people on Angular, not trying to put it down, but yeah. I myself have mostly moved on.
The more hey Oleg, hi, good to see you.
Oh, you know this person?
Yeah, he's a maintainer of React Hook Form, the forms library that I'm a big fan of. Yeah, so
that's awesome.
We've been chatting a lot.
Well, welcome. glad to see you here. But yeah. Okay. Angular pieces aside, it sounds like you're okay with it just not even being in the repo. You don't want that. Don't want that stuff in.
It is what it is.
It is what it is. There we go. All right, let's go back to code review. Use mutation. So this is, I guess it's inside of our to-do list, but we have a to-do item. Obviously, that's one of these two things. Let me get rid of the second list real quick. Just that might be confusing. There we go. So here's our to-do item. There's two mutations, obviously, right? Like we can click to toggle it, or we can click to delete it. It didn't like the delete. Did that not?
It doesn't like to delete done to-dos, maybe. I don't know.
Maybe. Oh, is that? Let's see. That was delete. It sent the delete. It's returned correctly. I wonder. Let me check my terminal. Is there something that went awry? Doesn't look like it. Oh no. Let me restart the serve process. Maybe
it did work before. I have seen you delete something, but maybe we never deleted a check to do. I don't know.
Yeah, let's try it again. Add. This is where I love Playwright. I don't have to do this manually, but okay. Let's try. Let's see. A checked to do. I don't know.
Works.
I don't know. That's lost to the ether. But okay, back to mutations now.
Yeah.
So yeah, we have the two here. I think this is heavily based on my live stream with Ahmed, but we have like a use mutation here for deleting the to do. Here's that delete to do API. Obviously, I think here probably want to do a similar thing as we did.
Yeah, we could just go for sunshine cases now. This doesn't really matter.
Sure. Anything else that stands out right now?
Yeah, I would say a couple of things. So one of the things a question that would come to my mind is why would we actually do the update manually in on success? So what we're doing here is we are deleting an item, and then in the on success we are filtering out the item because it was deleted. But when we think about like maybe this is not the case for a to-do list, but for example, I have a shared to-do list with my wife, and she creates to-dos for me all the time. So I kind of like to have like the latest state of my to-do list on my app. So whenever I make a mutation on purpose, like with a delete button, for me it makes more sense to just call invalidate queries and actually make a refetch to get the latest state in. Just so that I have like not only that the item that I deleted is actually gone, but also all other things that might have happened by other users of this application. Now, obviously, this depends on like again the level of interactivity that you have on your app. But when we view the cache that we have as a snapshot of a point in time of when we have fetched the data, then we need points in time where we actually like get the latest data from the server, and after a mutation is a good time for that. Not only because we know that something has changed, right? The thing that we have changed needs to come in again. Yeah. But also because, and this might not be so obvious here on this simple mutation where we delete something, but we are actually duplicating the logic that happens on the backend again on the front end. Because what does the backend have to do when the backend contains like the list of to-dos? It has to also filter it down and remove the one item that we deleted. Now we have to do the same thing. And another example where this duplication of logic comes in is, for example, when we have a sorted list and we want to add an item, right? And the list is sorted by the name. Now, when we add the new item to it, we have to insert it at the correct position. And that depends on whatever our current sorting is. Right. So all of a sudden, a little mutation that just wants to add an item becomes like 10 lines of code, 20 lines of code on the client, where we can also do mistakes. That's logic that we need to maintain, that we need to like keep in sync with whatever the backend is doing, right? Maybe they're sorting it differently, or I don't know, like maybe casings and stuff like that.
So I think there's like an architectural decision that you're speaking to at this point, right? Because like this API was actually designed so that we wouldn't need to refetch. Let's say there's just like one user. The idea for like what these things are returning is actually specifically so we could, maintain our current local state on the browser side. It sounds like you would always opt for instead of trying to do something where we're manually maintaining that client, you just want to do a new network request at this point, right?
Yeah.
To go refresh fresh data. Yeah.
I would even go so far and like we have some things, because we are using TRPC as well, which is a full stack kind of adapter over React query. And we've talked to the maintainer a bit, and he's like, what he's doing is just globally invalidating all the queries after every mutation, because it does request batching as well. So just have as little code as possible on the front end to maintain. Just I changed something, give me everything that's new on my screen right now, and then it just makes a request or makes a bunch of requests. And of course, this depends on other factors, like are the requests expensive or not? Is it's a trade-off, right? Is it more important to save the one request to the backend than it is to have some logic in JavaScript that you need to write and maintain, and also not have the latest data of everything on your front end?
Well,
so,
like you said, if this list becomes sorted, this goes out the window right now. Like we could like figure out the right index to insert it at, obviously. But why do that when like an API request really isn't all that expensive? Like what you were saying. So how would we, if all we wanted to do on success was just invalidate the specific store, is that what will we still use on success here?
Exactly. So we could use on success or unsettled, because with unsettled we would also do it for erroneous cases. Like if there's an error, you also want to maybe still refetch it.
Yeah.
And then
in this case, it doesn't matter what was settled or what was returned. Is it just on the client we call invalidate?
It's client, and then it's invalidate queries, and then you pass in like the same, it needs to be an array, the query key to it, and then it will mark the query as stale, and if it's actively used, it will also refetch it right away. So that's where you get the kind of like the same thing.
So we pretty much want to do this for all of our mutations. It sounds like, right? Let's use unsettled.
Yeah, we can do it for the, well, I would maybe say that the toggle is maybe a bit special. We can look at the toggle like specifically. Yeah.
Let's fix this one, and then we'll take a look at the toggle specifically. I forgot how much I had copied. There we go. All right, let's make sure that's working. One delete. Looks good. And then okay, so for toggling, this is a special case.
So
how is it special in your mind?
It's special in my mind because it's a user interaction that profits from immediate feedback. And this is not implemented in this here. So if you were to go to your API layer and you would kind of make it slow, so you would kind of put a delay of like 500 milliseconds into it, what you would see is that you would actually click the checkbox, and it probably wouldn't react at all. If it like depends on how it's implemented, but it probably just wouldn't tick.
Let's try it. Toggle. I'll just do like, is this async? Let's just async. We'll do Wait, new promise. Yeah.
Yes.
Let's give
Copilot
it.
knows how to do it.
I know it's.
So unless you have an uncontrolled form input, but I don't think it's like. Well,
I
that's a
don't
long sleeve.
recall honestly. So let's see. Click it. Yeah, it's going immediately, but what's going on with the network?
No, it's still returning instantly.
Did I do something wrong? Let's see. Wait, new promise, resolve. Looks right.
Oh, it looks
fine. On the list. Here's the mutation.
Maybe it's a hot reloading issue again. I don't know.
Okay, let me try doing a hard refresh. Is that something?
Have you killed it?
Did I kill it? Doesn't like something. It's not taking my keystrokes even.
Oh, interesting.
Wait. Oh, I tried to load. I tried to reload where I was streaming from. That's why I think. No, I'm still not getting keystrokes. Do I get keystrokes on another window? Yeah, let me pull this one over. There you go. Refresh here. Okay. There we go. Click it. All right, let's check the network here. Yeah, it's coming back right away. Why? Did I not hit save? I'm not sure.
So that's the.
Is that, did I do the right method or did I do the right?
It's toggle to do and it awaits a new promise. Yeah, I think that looks fine. I always have Copilot write those methods for me as well, and they usually work.
Yeah, I know. I think that's part of the problem is it's making us dumb, right?
Yeah, but at least we're double checking if that's like correct.
Yeah. Okay, so this should be 3, 4, 5.
Did you do 50,000? Because that's 50 seconds, I think.
Oh, yeah. I did. But still. All right, let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Done waiting. Okay, there it is. So that should be working. I think it is the case that just because it's a form, the form will go to complete, even though.
Okay, but is the toggle is the toggle request going out? No, it's not. Okay, so then that's fine. So
yeah, there it goes then, after the 5 seconds.
Yeah, delay. After the 5 seconds. Okay, cool.
Sorry about that.
So
it took us a while to figure that out, unfortunately. But
so why is the form going into like? That depends on how the checkbox is probably uncontrolled. So can you show how the form looks like?
Let's take a look at the checkbox itself. Import item. Here's the input. Default checked is here. So
yeah, so it's actually an uncontrolled checkbox that's not going to reflect the server state. So if you're only seeing the completed state that you get from like the initial state, and then it just shows whatever you've clicked. It doesn't actually, if the backend returns no, you haven't done this to do, this wouldn't be shown here, right?
Right. Like if we look at the actual this right here, was it like document, right? Select. Am I query selector? Dang it. Selector, and then I think we have an ID for it.
Checkbox 1. Yeah.
Checkbox. I need this in a string. Checkbox 1. Oops. Yeah. So this checked, right? Is what's setting that?
Yeah.
Or I don't know. Is there a way we can actually get into the properties of the DOM object? I don't know. My dev tool skills are failing me, but
I'm gonna like push React hook form right now because Moshifan in the chat.
I know Moshifan. He knows exactly what's up.
He joins a live stream and we're talking about forms and it's like
I love state management. I love forms and I love tables. I don't know if Kevin's still here, but I was just telling him like I have a weird thing for tables, man. I don't know how to explain how to describe it, but I like I don't know, the visualization and just the order and control of it all.
Yeah.
But all right.
So
So
let's change this to like value completed, right? I think that should do it.
value like
Yeah.
so.
Yeah.
Okay. And on
I
click is
guess.
still fine, right? I think. What
Yeah,
is it?
or could
Like
be on
ID?
chain.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's fine. I guess that's fine.
Yeah. What? So ID right now is string or undefined. Where's ID coming from?
Well, from your
this is on our
props.
interface here. So this is probably something else. All right, let's ignore that one for
Yeah.
now. But yeah, anything else here? Maybe from the React query side of things.
So, but maybe can you show the form like now? How does it work now? Because what
Oh,
we
sure.
should see is what you should still see is that you like click it.
Let
this
me hit
really
a
like
refresh.
yeah.
So we click it. It went right
So
away.
what I was expecting to see is that you click it and nothing changes, and then only after the value comes back, it would change the state. Isn't that what
We've
value
summoned
does on
Kevin. Yeah, I love tables, Kevin. But okay, so Moshi, dude, what did we do wrong? I think it's probably
forms?
yeah, I know. Completed. I don't know if there's a way to do this nicely, right? To set the value to just be completed, because it's also I think it's also got to be not just value but also checked.
Or
I
is
feel
it
like.
checked? I don't know.
Yeah, checked is going to be the directive that we add on to it. That's ultimately going to say, I think, Moshi, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that one will say actually whether the thing will be open or not. So the fact that we have a directive on there now is going to like that made this happen. Sorry, so yeah, done waiting. That that's I don't know. I'm wrong. I feel like. Ugh, I don't know. I don't
Yeah.
know what's
So
going on at this point. Oh, and also like these aren't canceling each other either.
no, because it's a mutation.
Right.
Mutations just accumulate over time. So
Okay. So
the
they
thing that
won't cancel each other over time. It's just the store knows about the most recent one that would be running. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. That makes sense. I don't know why our checked isn't.
I also don't know, but the thing that I wanted to like, if this is like implemented correctly, what we would see is that you click the checkbox and it wouldn't actually reflect the change because the change is asynchronous, right? So we only know after the backend has returned the data that this to do is now untoggled, and this is something that you would usually solve with optimistic updates. So you would try to write to the query cache before you actually make that change.
Right. Okay, so an optimistic update. What would that would be how we would manage this expectation of like I might actually argue that delete might be similar just because it's a to-do list. Like maybe for most CRUD operations, delete doesn't make sense to do optimistically, but given it's a to-do list, delete might make sense. I don't know, maybe not. But
yeah, you can do it. It's just a matter of like, again, with optimistic updates, you have to duplicate the logic in the onMutate handler to just kind of like you click that button, you remove it from your list. The thing is that in optimistic updates are a bit boilerplatey, and there are a lot of things that you need to wire up to get them to work. Except that in version 5, we'll have an easier way to do optimistic updates for these cases specifically. So this is where I'm actually looking forward to have people try out version 5 and see if this is new.
I know it won't work, but I imagine the APIs are going to be at least similar. Is it going to just be like, here's a function, something like optimistic update?
No, it's actually quite different. If you open up the docs, I can show you because I have an example in because the version 5 also has docs already where they are up, and I think we have even a to-do list example that's quite similar.
Is this are we on the right track? Docs?
Yeah, that's perfect. And what you need to do is you need to switch from version 3 to version 5.
Oh, wow. Is on 3 by default?
No, it's version 3 because Google search result ranks 3 higher. That's like one of the stupid things.
Google.
Yeah, we need to Tanner. We need to fix that. If someone knows something about SEO, it's Tanner, and he needs to fix it.
Nice.
Okay. So then we go into like there must be some in the concepts. There is optimistic updates. Problem is the search also won't work because the search is indexed for the latest version, and then kind of like the search only works for the current version.
Cool. Optimistic.
So there is optimistic updates, yeah, and one thing that if we scroll down first, because I have like this version is like the new one that I've done first. But if you scroll down to the second, the cache option, so that is like no, a bit down, like where the heading is. Yeah, this is kind of the way that you have to do it right now. So what happens is that you have an onMutate where you have to basically do the update with set query data and kind of create a snapshot of the previous state and then return that so that when it goes wrong, you can actually restore that previous state.
Cool.
So you're overriding it, you're returning the snapshot, and then in onError, you're kind of restoring that value from before, so that if an optimistic update goes wrong in those rare cases, then you can still roll back to the previous.
So you're playing with the cache yourself based on the API that React Query is giving us. Yeah. Essentially.
You have to kind of manipulate the cache and do something in the cache before React Query puts the real value into the cache.
Right. So we gotta like remember what to revert to in case that goes wrong.
Exactly. Yeah.
Got it.
And that's what's happening here. And that is a bit like boilerplate. Yeah, it's a lot. Like it's also like why I say I wouldn't overuse optimistic updates. Not only because it's so difficult to do in React Query, but also because like most user interactions don't actually need that immediate feedback, and you always need to like duplicate the logic that happens on the backend. This is not going away. So this is like something that you probably always need to do. But if we take a look at how maybe we didn't do a Boolean. Maybe that's the thing.
Do you want to see if we can fix that one quick? I thought this was
what is completed. It's like just do not or something. I don't know.
Not. I wonder if it's so he was saying just checked. Maybe value needs to go away. I don't know. Let's see.
One more try.
Let me give it a hard refresh. Click. Okay, I think that did it.
Yeah, you clicked it, nothing happens, and then after 5 seconds it will probably go away. So that's and the problem. Yes, we made a checkbox work. That's great.
Suck, dude.
Use React hook form. That's the lesson here.
So it needed to just be only checked. I was right. In my defense, my thinking was on the correct
I said
side.
Value. Sorry, I saw default value, and I thought it's value. Yeah,
I legitimately thought if we did both value and checked, that would work. I understand now why it doesn't. I think changing the value is actually going to set checked on the DOM without it being on like without seeing it inside of whatever you call it. All right.
Throw it at the wall and see what sticks. I think this is the approach. So if you scroll up now, we can look at the new API, which I'm quite excited about. And this was actually inspired by how Remix is doing it. That there was the first time where I've seen it, and the second part is I think Solid Start is also doing something similar. Mm-hmm. So our mutation
is this all of it right here?
That's all of it, yeah. So our mutation looks like a normal mutation where we just have our mutation function, and in onSettled we are invalidating the query to actually get like the latest data back. And what we're going to do is we're not going to manipulate the cache directly. We're just going to render something differently in the UI depending on it. So if you scroll down to the rendering part where we are iterating over our to-do list,
just right here,
this was for a mutation that was going to add a value to the to-do list. So if you create a new to-do, you have a mutation running that has a like a new value in the like as part of the mutation added to the list. So you can render this at the end of the list while the mutation is still going. And for this, we return an is pending property so that it tells you that the mutation is going on at the moment. And we return variables. And the variables are basically the things that you use to create the mutation. So it's the input that went to the mutation. So if you're creating a to-do and you name it learn React query, then while the mutation is going on, we return this value directly to you, and then you can add it to your normal to-do list at the very end, and it'll just appear there. And in this case, I've given it a different style, and the key can also be calculated from, well, it doesn't even, I don't think it needs it. Well, it's in the list, so it needs a key. Anyways, maybe it doesn't even need a key. So
it should. I would expect you would. Well, it may not need it, but it'll give you that error, I'm sure, if you don't have it. But cool. So it's kind of like you're swapping the actual to-do text for. Wait, maybe I'm confused now. I don't know. Because you always do this.
Yes,
right?
This is like your to-do list, the 5 to-dos that you have, right? And then you want to add another one. So now you have 6.
I see.
But you still render the top 5, and then you render another one that's currently in the pending state right at the bottom. And I think
you definitely don't need a key then,
similar.
I don't think. Do you?
You don't need the key. Yeah, I don't know why I added this. It's an interesting example, but
yeah. Okay. But okay, and then so I get it now. So the variables, where did that come from? Oh, that's just okay.
It comes from the mutation back.
Okay, got it. So while it is pending, then it would just have this. That would be that's what we'd have in. Okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
So while it's pending, it has like the new to do, because that's the input to our mutation function. And
wouldn't you want this to be variables.text, or did I miss something?
No, because that's just what we pass to axios.post. If you scroll a bit to the left on the example, it's just the input that goes into the mutation function, and that's just a string in this example. Yeah.
Got it. Okay.
And then because we invalidate the query at the end, what happens is that once the mutation is done when the corresponding invalidation is also done, because we're returning it. So that means we have like 5 to-dos, and then we have the pending one below it. And then we make the refetch, and after we are done, is pending is false, so we are not rendering this. But at that time, our items will have all the 6 values, because then it's already part of the server state. Cool. And then it will basically replace the pending item with the real item.
Got it.
And that's kind of a very powerful way to just compose your UI without actually like touching anything in the cache, no manual cache manipulation. And it works very well for those examples where you actually just only have one place in the UI where you need to show that.
But Dominique, what if the list is alphabetical?
Then you need to insert it at the right point. That's not going to change, right? That's we can't change logic, right? We can only try to make it a bit simpler.
Yeah, that's interesting. All right. Well, yeah, I guess I could imagine how we might do that anyways too. So it's possible with this API for sure. So the change that y'all made was you added this variables property to what use mutation.
Yeah, that was one of the changes. Yeah.
Got it. Okay. Neat. Well, very cool. I like that a lot better than this, right? So
it both has advantages and disadvantages. So I still think there's use cases where you'd want to do this. For example, if you really have like multiple places where you're using the query and you want all of them to update at the same time with the mutation, you might be better off just writing to the cache, because then all the places in the UI are automatically using that value. But if you are just having one place where you want to quickly show the pending value while the mutation is going on, the other way is probably a bit easier and less code to write and to maintain. So there's advantages and drawbacks with it. It's like everything's a trade-off always. It's not gonna get easier.
Not everything's a trade-off, Dominique. I'm convinced of this. There's some things that are just better. But yeah, no, I by the point well made. I think there are trade-offs to be made, and sometimes it's just making the decision on that. So yeah, cool. Anything else of note over here? I imagine we should probably wrap it up for both of our sakes.
Yeah, it's getting a bit late here as well.
Let's anything else you wanted to bring up? We can start wrapping up.
No, I think it's fine. Haven't seen
Okay.
anything else, probably.
Okay. Well, if something else angers you, let me know.
I'll make a PR.
Excellent. Yeah, I think we have a. I'll send you the GitHub link afterwards.
Yeah,
But yeah,
cool.
thanks all for joining. It was really cool to see Kevin and Moss Chiffon with React Hooks forums. It's just really neat to see everyone showing up. So appreciate that, and yeah, great to have everyone show up. We'll do it again next time. I'm trying to convince Kevin to come on next week. We'll see if that
Yeah,
works
go
out.
Kevin. I'm gonna watch
Kevin
it.
rocks. All right, let's turn it off and catch y'all next time.
Thank you so much for having me, Zach. Have a good
You
day.
got it.
See
Thanks
ya.
so much for coming, dude. You rock.
Bye.